Hello and welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today I am joined by Josh Grandinetti. Josh is a firefighter and paramedic from Arizona who has been serving for the last 15 years and currently holds the rank of captain. He's a certified mindfulness and meditation instructor, as well as holding a further certification in trauma sensitivity. He's also the founder of Foundation Fortified, which aims to be a resource for first responders by providing mindfulness training specifically and uniquely designed for people in those frontline professions. So thank you for joining us today, Josh.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh and I have been talking a little bit offline and both incredibly excited to talk about all of the mindfulness aspects of everything that he's been doing outside of the fire service. But we will just jump in quickly and sort of just cover off your first responder experience and what led you down the path of wanting to become a first responder and in particular a firefighter.
Yeah, okay. Well, all the way growing up and everything, I was always interested in the brain, the human brain, the mind, what's going on with that. How does that thing seem to be working? And so I was fully going to school. My sole purpose through high school and going into college was to go into neuroscience. And
Wow.
I took a first aid and CPR class taught locally by a Tempe firefighter. And I tell people all the time, the tragedy is I don't even remember the woman's name that forever changed my life. But she's just the most radical person that ever struck a chord with me as soon as I met her. She was just full of know-how. She was full of intuition. She was full of just this overall responsible community person atmosphere that was just so captivating to me that I dropped everything I'd ever been interested in and picked up a fire hose and never looked back, So
Wow,
I don't even remember the woman's name, but I
that's
met her
incredible.
and that was the end of it. So
Yeah, for someone to
I
just
owe
have that impact on you,
I owe the last
unbelievable.
15 years of my life to this woman.
Oh my goodness. So, and so did you grow up are you a local Arizonian or did you grow up
Yep.
somewhere else?
Born
Yep.
and raised here in Arizona. I
You
told
must
my
like the
wife.
heat then.
What was that?
I said you must like the heat then.
Well, the older I get, I think so many people move to Arizona because they're done with the cold. And I don't blame them. I've been back when it's cold. And one of the nicest things about being in the heat is you can still have an outdoor life no matter how hot it is. A sufficient amount of sunscreen, sufficient amount of water gets you through almost any activity as long as you aren't too far from shade, right? But when it's wet, miserable, and full of snow and ice, there is no outside. It just doesn't exist. So we can still have a full range of outdoor activities out here in Arizona, and that's nice. But as I get older, those 3.5 decades of this summer heat is beginning to kind of, I don't know. I think I might want to go build a snowman. maybe I'll think about it, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I've done the opposite. I obviously grew up in Australia and we are known for our hot summers. And then I transplanted over to Boston and I'd never seen snow.
What's better?
Never. Oh, you know, it's a good question.
I wish there was a definable answer. I wish you just came right out with
I know, right? I do it because I'm deep in contemplation, Josh. This is why. So you can embrace the snow, I think, and you can go sledding and have fun with your kids and that is awesome. I love going sledding and that kind of stuff, but it's more I'm a metric system Celsius girl. It gets to minus 20 degrees Celsius. And I'm just fucking all done. I don't want to go outside. It's this is not for me. So I don't think I'm built for it. I do think I would probably choose the heat, but not humid heat, dry heat. I don't like humid heat. So, so I did Arizona when I came and visited a few years ago. It was really lovely.
And people say that. People tell me you have no idea how good you have it in Phoenix. And I should know. I mean, people come here for some work trip,
Yeah.
and then 3 years later they're trying to buy property, and then 10 years later they're here and they're
Yeah.
clogging up the freeways. So, I do enjoy where I've grown up. I've gone through a lot of sunscreen.
Yeah, oh God, I can imagine, right? Oof. And so you said that obviously, like you were in college when you sort of met this amazing person who sort of like changed the course of your future. Like how old were you, and how far through school did you get before you did the
Well,
switch?
I was that ripe, indelible age of probably 18, where we're all kind of reaching out and discovering, we have this childhood full of lessons and learn and education, and
Mm-hmm.
she just caught me at the right time, So
Yeah.
um, I started going into fire science, and quickly I got hired very young. I was very
Mm-hmm.
fortunate. I got hired at 19 to my first professional department.
Wow.
And I've basically been doing that ever since. I
Yeah.
worked at an organization called Gila River Fire. They hired me first. It's an Indian
Okay.
reservation out here.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yep.
and so I worked there for about 4.5 years. Got my first few years as a firefighter there, and then I went to another department, Scottsdale. Things didn't work out for me there, and then after Scottsdale Fire, I went to my current department, Eloy Fire. So
Okay.
if Eloy is a small town here in Arizona, I like to tell people Arizona's full of a bunch of small western towns, and there's one big city in the middle of all these tombstones.
Yeah.
Um, Eloy is a very small town, and they're pretty famous for skydiving. They're the number one skydiving center in the world. They fall more people out of the sky per year than anywhere else. So.
Yeah, and Josh and I were having an offline conversation about that because I have been one of those people who has ridiculously jumped out of one of those planes, and Josh and I were talking. He's like, "I know exactly where you did that. That's
What
my
was your
fire
what,
department."
what was your experience of it like there?
So it was yeah, it's not something that I would replicate. Like, I'm very glad that I did it, and I'm thankful for the experience of not throwing myself out of the plane, but as in throwing myself out of my comfort zone to do it. But I did it attached to a family member, probably one of the closest people to my husband that exists on this earth. So I felt safe in that respect. But he is, a 20-year Army Ranger veteran, and basically him and another friend of ours who may or may not have been a SEAL in a former life, kind of like egged me into it a little bit, and I was like, oh, I can't back down. I'm too proud. So, there were probably smarter things in my life that I could have done, but I was glad for the experience.
Very cool. Very cool.
And I think surely you've got to be next. Surely you've got to.
Yeah, you were asking me if I'd done it, and I was telling you, the organization out there does a once a year little thing for the firefighters, police officers, and it's
Yeah.
kind of been scattered since COVID kind of hit.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that, I just always found myself on duty during that day. So I've yet to do it, but
Yeah.
I do intend to someday. We'll see.
Yeah. Because nothing else you do is probably that dangerous. So
No, I'm really trying to find some thrill in my life.
exactly. And so you're with the how long have you been with the department that you're with now for?
About 9 years. About 9 years, going on 10, I believe. So
Okay. And so you've been a captain for 5 years, is that correct?
5 of them. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Going on 5. So.
And so I'm not quite sure if all rank structure is the same within fire departments. You have what I would call just like an OR, like another rank. So like firefighters, and then is it lieutenant and then captain? Is that the same rank structure?
Yeah, that's very familiar traditional structuring. I think out west, out here, we make one small tree. We have firefighters, and then what we have is like an engineer. I think that's
Okay.
typically your lieutenant in other
Okay.
places.
Yeah.
Engineer is kind of the operator of the apparatus,
Okay.
right? So they're responsible for bumper to bumper and the people within the apparatus and everything apparatus, all the equipment. And then you have the captain who's responsible for the apparatus and the goal and trajectory of what that mission is for that crew. So that's what a captain does. And beyond that, you have your battalion chiefs who are in charge of all units and that shift, right? And it just gets larger from there. But Same
Okay.
basic structure, I think, pretty much everywhere. Just
Yeah.
some terms there in the middle are a little bit different.
Yeah. Are you like relatively young to be a captain?
I was, let's see here. So I'm 35 now. I was promoted to captain, let's see here, March, just before I turned 30. So I was promoted when I was
Yeah.
29. But like I
Ah.
said earlier, I got pretty lucky getting on when I was 19.
Yeah.
And I got on. Eloy is a smaller department. So when they get someone with experience, I mean, it was pretty quick and easy for me to be able to show that I had some training from other organizations and I
Yeah.
was able to move up. So I was fortunate in that respect too. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
No, that's cool.
a little bit younger than most. I think most people find themselves in the captain spot somewhere mid 30s,
Yeah.
40s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Or could be, like 50s like my husband.
how long has your husband been a firefighter?
Oh, I want to say it's about 20, 22, 23 years, somewhere in that realm. So,
I see.
he's a bit older than me. There's a 15-year age gap. So
Okay. Okay.
he was
Very cool.
already on when I met him and all that kind of thing.
How
So,
many more years does he want to do the job? As long as he can, or is he waiting for
oh,
the?
I mean, like, if I gave him a good reason and the finances, he'd probably leave tomorrow. But not to say he doesn't love it, but
No, I understand.
there's
It's a
that
job.
like the 24-hour shifts is just, sometimes like I'm getting too old for this shit. And like obviously like the higher up you go, like the different sort of stress in terms of it's not just the physicality of it. It's like the stresses, when you're looking after your troops, and he gets upgraded to deputy a fair bit. So then he's
Hmm.
kind of in charge of like half the city. So it's
There you go.
that
Yeah.
kind of mental gymnastics that's involved with that kind of thing. But like, in terms of you, like, how have you found like your thought processes having to change from going from, like a firefighter, and then, whether you went to engineer and then up to captain, like, do you feel like it has changed your mindset in terms of like, obviously there's that natural level of camaraderie amongst us all, that we're like, everyone wants to come home safe and all of that kind of thing. But then when, like the buck stops with you, is that something that you've kind of noticed in your mindset that's,
Oh,
very different?
definitely. I think every officer, whether you're a police officer or you're in the fire service or even in
Mm.
dispatch or in EMS, there is that turning point in your career where you're one of the guys who you know is out there doing the real work while the guys that are too scared to be out here are behind a desk, and we all kind of play that game when we got that youth and that
Yeah.
you know uh, virility still about us. But we don't realize what our leaders have to teach us and show us, and they're putting us in the right positions to be as successful as we possibly can. And when you begin to want to take that next step and you begin to understand all that, there really are those days where your complaints don't matter as much as the city. And
Yeah.
when you're older in your career, you'll understand that, young man.
Yeah.
And that's and
Exactly.
I'm not silly enough to understand that my fire chief probably looks at me at the captain level when I'm moaning because my crew wants to go get, dinner to first dues away at a certain restaurant. My chief's like, listen, captain, okay, we all just have our roles to play, and
Yeah.
we have structures in place so that when things happen, we all fall in line. We don't have to build the structure, right then and there. You
Yeah.
have somebody thinking at every level for the
Mm.
organization, for the city, for the taxpayers, for the people that need to be served, right? So we all have our roles, and you're
Yeah.
right. When you go from being not just, but you go from being a ground troop to an officer
Mm.
level, there's that shedding off of some fun, but imposing immaturity that comes with just being one of the guys, and you do kind of
Yeah.
have to step into a little bit more of a diligent role. So there was a
Yeah.
little bit of that shift, but
Yeah.
I think I took to it pretty well, and I like to hope my crew enjoys working for me. I like to hope.
Not that you'll ever hear.
Yeah.
It's like,
I think our open form text thread, I have a very good idea of what my crew thinks about me.
yeah, that's just for not for nothing. That's meant to be on WhatsApp, so it's encrypted. Just
Oh, I
word to the
see.
wise.
I see. That's that. All right. New crew assignment.
I know, right? No, but it's like, it's funny. So like now with like my husband, because he gets like upgraded to deputy so often, like he got to go to work the other day as like, you know, with his crew on his truck, and he was just like, I'm so fucking excited to like not be in charge. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, you know, he's like in charge of his crew, and he's sort of the captain of his firehouse, so he still has to like manage all of the, I would
Everything.
refer to bitching and moaning and all of the all of the things, but like he was just like, oh, I don't have to do manpower, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that. It was just
You could definitely tell. You could definitely tell around on an overtime shift, right? Because
yeah.
the firefighters and engineers or lieutenant, the
Mm,
non-officers love the overtime shifts where they can be the one in charge for the day.
yeah.
And then after being an officer for a little while, you pick up the overtime shift just to be a firefighter, and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
yeah,
100%.
whatever you want to
100%.
do today, boss, I don't care. It's like, yes.
Exactly.
So,
And so, you know, in terms of your like career aspirations, you know, you've obviously been a captain like for 5 years now. Is like the structure something that you're interested in like progressing like up further, or you're just like, you know what, I'm really good here?
yeah, well, I enjoy being a captain. I've enjoyed it every 5 years of this bit.
Mm,
My fire service career is somewhat in jeopardy right now. I did have this major injury at work last Thanksgiving, and I'm
okay.
still have not made it back to the truck in almost 9 months. So I
Jeez.
still have another surgery ahead of me for my knee.
Oof.
Whether or not I'm going to be able to suit up my PPE and serve my community in the same way is very much
Yeah.
up to interpretation. There are soft tissue joint injuries where you hear
Mhm.
people, tearing an ACL or tearing an MCL, tearing some ligament or tendon off the bone, right? These are
Yeah.
soft tissue injuries. The way my surgeon explained it was I had a very hard tissue injury, right?
Oh, okay.
So your teeth have a very nice coating of thick enamel on them, right?
Yeah.
Or thin enamel on them, right? And that makes them very smooth and very well. Your joints have that as well, and I just chipped all of that off with the way the mechanism of the injury happened.
Oh.
I just chipped all that tissue off, and there's no growing back hard tissue. So they do some things to make it livable,
Mm-hmm.
but whether that joint can compress and change and
And
force under
function.
injury,
Yeah.
especially after a certain age of 30, they say joints just don't respond the
Yeah.
same way. So I'm still fighting to get back. It's a little bit more of a journey ahead of me. I have to see how I'm going to do after this next surgery, but we're doing everything we can to get healthy. And in the meantime, Foundation Fortified is it's giving me time to start this project that I've had sitting in a binder for a long
Yeah.
time for the
Yeah.
first few years. So I'm very thankful to have the time to be able to do this. So.
Yeah. And I think as well, like for, you know, someone who, you know, if you're listening to this, like I encourage you to go and like take a look at Josh, because he's clearly someone who like you work out, you are, you know, there's a level of physicality, not just obviously being a firefighter, but it's clear that you really like look after yourself and take care of your body. So I can imagine that that would be incredibly challenging for you. And so to have something else in your life professional wise, like, you know, obviously aside from like your family, that like is kind of giving you purpose, because
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, when they get like a significant injury that prevents them from doing what it is that they love and feel passionately about, it can impact you in so many ways, and in particularly mental health.
Well, I appreciate it. I've definitely been through a few stages of this, but the truth
Mm,
is, mindfulness practice has been such a tool for me throughout this whole experience. And I'm lucky to have discovered it before I needed it, right?
yeah.
I've been a diligent mindfulness participant for my own purposes for
Hmm.
10 years, 8 years,
Yeah.
somewhere in that ballpark. And, you know, I've, I've, I've been lucky enough to just, when I first got injured, we do have these ways in which we have our identities,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah.
And without knowing it, even as a diligent practitioner of mindfulness, I had certain identities that I carried around throughout the world.
Hmm.
I was a carpet cleaner with my father. We own a carpet cleaning business. That's a very
Hmm.
labor intensive job, and I would
Yeah.
do that on my off days. I would be a captain. Amateur bodybuilder. It's kind of my hobby is to bodybuild, and prior to, I played basketball with my two boys, and we're always wrestling around and doing something. And, when I get an injury like that, I've just relegated to whatever I can
Yeah.
do from a chair, for my family, for my crew, but I'd always been a physical creature, and I'm just not a physical creature for maybe the rest of my life, or maybe just the duration of my injury. But, when you have these identifications robbed of you, and you don't even know how to relate to yourself,
Yeah.
mindfulness practice was just an incredible tool to have during that, because at any given moment, you really are just the collection of your conscious awareness at any given moment in time. You
Mm-hmm.
know, these stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're up to in the world and the outcomes that we want to receive, all of these are just stories anyway. They're stories we're telling ourselves. What are you going to be doing in the next hour? You have some story about this conversation, but it could absolutely be interrupted by a dint of bad luck, right? No, nobody in 2018 told themselves what their next 2 years was going to be like come 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of us knew we were going to be massively involved in this worldwide project, but that is in fact what we were doing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, human identity, how you relate to yourself, how you relate to your life, mindfulness can really give you space that you really are just discovering yourself moment to moment as it is
Mm-hmm.
anyway. And
Yeah.
so to be able to sit down and notice that about yourself when you're having a majorly personal experience happen that's changing you, really, really made that experience a lot easier on myself than I think,
Mm.
some people might accidentally fall to, poor coping mechanisms or difficult relationship bonding. I've had my
Mm-hmm.
fair share of disgruntlement with my wife and I as we go through this change, but her and I are still best friends, and her and I are still doing this thing together, and our boys
Yeah.
don't, so I've been very fortunate to have this practice. And I guess if it's my role to do anything, it's just time to try to bring it to first responders as well, because we just ignore it at our own peril for our industry and for our communities. So
Yeah, very much so. And I think it is like we are, I think the only species on the planet who we have the ability to think about our own cognition.
hmm
And
hmm
so that's, yeah, where like you're saying mindfulness came in. And before we sort of like delve a little deeper into it, like and if you don't mind sharing, where were you at in your life or in your career where sort of like was there a need that you came across where you're like I'm struggling and I feel like I need something, or did you kind of come across it by accident and really just kind of fall in love with it?
well, the way I describe it, I've always been a wanderer. Okay,
Okay.
I've definitely one of those kids that looked at the stars and just didn't understand how I'm here. You know what I mean? Like, devoid of what I was or who I
Yeah.
was. It's just, I didn't ask to be here. And now I'm just here with all these motivations, goals, and
Mm-hmm.
impulses. And I seem to have to carry them out. And I seem to have to, and it was all very just interesting to me to just be awake in some way that
Yeah.
is not non-awake, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So that's always been a very interesting perplexion for me as a young kid.
Mm-hmm.
But mindfulness and meditation kind of existed for me in the same way that many of our listeners will experience it now. I'm not interested in wearing orange and shaving my head, and I don't understand the project, right?
Yeah.
um, well, mindfulness is just a new term that you're going to hear more and more about, because it's kind of the West's attempts. Some people from the West that went back east to discover mindfulness, discover meditation,
Mm-hmm.
had similar paths where they spent much more time than I did. But when you first start, you have to kind of go through some religious dogmatism to get to the baby in the bathwater there.
Mm-hmm.
And mindfulness is the term that is being coined by the West to teach what is scientifically defensible about meditation practice as a religious practice, but devoid of all the religious dogmatism that comes with it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what mindfulness is compared to meditation. And my own personal journey, I found it as a just place for me to go and ask questions. You go and ask questions about why we're here, what's the purpose of life, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
always find someone to give you an answer,
Yeah.
right? There's ancient books that will give you an answer, and there's people these days that are selling, your self help bookshelf
Yeah.
that'll tell you all the answers in the world to what you want, right? And then someone will come along and tell you, just sit down and if you want to understand your mind, just sit down and observe it,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll discover your own mind, and that those questions have always been more intriguing to me than an answer. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And like I was sort of looking on your website, I think it was either earlier today or the other day,
mhm.
and there was a quote on there by a guy who's sort of big in that mindfulness realm. Is it Sean Fargo? And
Mm,
it's and it was just like a really good like way to explain it, because I think, we hear the term like meditation and mindfulness, and especially for people in our first responder realm, they're kind of like, oh, what the fuck is that bullshit? And they
mm,
kind of just like, will be very just like dismissive of things like that. But so it was mindfulness is like the non-judgmental awareness of your moment to moment experience.
correct.
And so it's like about, like noticing and being aware of it, but, not labeling anything, like, almost like acknowledging your emotions, but not saying it's good or bad or indifferent. It's just like, I'm feeling sad right now,
Mm.
or, and like, I think like allowing space for it is that
Mm.
sort of, to like, as in like allowing yourself time or space to process it, perhaps,
Well,
like,
there's this tendency, the mind has two roles for us in our lives. And
mm-hmm,
really, fundamentally, the mind as you are, as the experiencing being that you tend to take yourself as, right? That whole project seems to only have two roles for us: to keep us safe,
mm-hmm,
okay, and to keep us inherently dissatisfied with our state of affairs in our lives. And that is what the mind's job is. The mind is solely responsible for discovering and enabling you to be safe as you trespass your environment,
mm-hmm.
but at the same time, pick up all the things that you enjoy doing. But it's in noticing that you want the thing where you've already lost the battle, because then you're trying to organize the world in such a way that you have to
Yeah.
have this thing to now achieve the satisfaction that you didn't have when you didn't know the thing was there to be had. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Now, the mind's job is just to constantly make us dissatisfied. I remember being promoted to captain was one of the best moments of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and having my firstborn, having my secondborn, getting married to the woman, all of these experiences. Even my very first professional career firefighter check that was all of $1,100. I was never going to worry about money again. But as soon as we hold on to our achievements, we can't help
Mm.
but notice that they disappear as fast as we can grasp onto them. And
Yeah.
it's in this trying to grasp onto it that really leaves us more dissatisfied than ever starting.
Yeah.
But there is a place to notice that it is, if you can't be happy in this moment, there has to
Mm-hmm.
be something now available
Yeah.
right now
Yeah.
that is worth being happy for.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what are we doing? We all know it's easy to be on a beach towel in the middle of paradise having a great day with the wind at our back and the sun on our skin. That's a easy day, and we spend
Mm-hmm.
so much of our lives achieving moments of this kind. But what is the difference between a prisoner in a jail cell by himself and a Buddhist monk in a jail cell by himself for hours at a time? One's called solitary confinement, one's just a man meditating.
Mm.
The difference between these two men is one's learned to control and master his mind.
Yeah.
The other is in full torment because he's alone with his thoughts and emotions. And
Yeah.
this is what mindfulness can do for you, is just simply learning how to control the patterns of thought, patterns of emotion,
Mm.
patterns of feeling that we all have as human beings.
Yeah.
That's a huge project of mindfulness meditation, what it can do for you as a person.
Yeah. And I think there is something, especially like as, sort of first responders, like we all, whether it's like the jobs that we've attended that all stay with you, and no matter how much time goes by they never leave you, or it's the, like I know when I was a cop, like the stress of all the freaking paperwork, and
Mhm.
the court cases and the inquest briefs and all of the things that you had to do, and yeah, worrying about the future, having anxiety over things from the past that either, you wondered whether you could have handled better, and all of the things. And so kind of just to be able to allow yourself a space to like not worry about that and not worry about that, and actually just go, okay, like this is where I'm at. This is, you know, like I think there is just almost like an inherent beauty about even discovering that that exists. Because like you're saying, like I think we all can get caught up in our own heads so much that we don't know where to turn when all we're doing is like, you know, worried about guilt or shame or regrets from the past, and then stressing out and having anxiety about things in the future.
Right.
Like,
Well, and just like you're saying, so the mind doesn't have separate ways to process separate types of stress in our lives. Okay. Fundamentally, the brain sees a tiger chasing you the same way as 20 emails that are just waiting for you to
yeah.
have to reply to. The mind sees no difference there. It is
Yeah.
just neuronal tissue governed by very few neurochemicals that is
Mm-hmm.
making this entire experience happen for you,
Yeah.
right? Now, whether or not the threat is coming from that chase or it's coming from indelible constant
It
distraction
still
by
activates the
it's still
same,
activating
yeah,
in,
the
in,
stress
in
response.
tissues that fire together, wire together. Now, mindfulness, you aren't doing anything when you're meditating, but training
Mm-hmm.
the mind to counteract it's other ways of going about the world to create your experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness is just a concentrated effort to notice any arising in consciousness is going to behave in almost the same way as if you were to get hit in the finger with a hammer, right? There's this moment where you're putting up a picture on the wall and you're just concentrating on doing that, and then you hit your finger with a hammer, quickly followed by that weight, that rush of pain where it's coming into awareness, and then we resist it, right? And we fight with that pain and we fight with it.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll notice that if you just allow the pain and you just sit with it, not only is it less insufferable, but it actually dissipates as fast as it can come on. But
Yeah.
it's in our resistance. It's in our fighting our daily efforts. It's in our
Mm-hmm.
resistance toward the suffering that we see as responders.
Yeah.
This is where so much of the catastrophic results of our lives come in.
Yeah.
To be with some of the traumatic experiences that you've been with, right? At Foundation Fortified, I remember when I first started sitting mindfulness practice, and I tell people all the time, I would sit in a practice and I'd go to some session and somebody would strike a gong. And then,
Mm.
I would jump in a way that nobody else would jump, no matter how new or practitioned they were. And it's
Mm.
just because of my response to tones.
Yeah.
Like my response to tones alone make me more on edge. But
Yeah.
the going back to those gong sessions would allow me to just notice how my body is responding to that prior to needing to respond to that. So
Mm-hmm.
by the time I got to the station after doing several of these sessions, the tones would just come on and I would feel my body engage, allow it to dissipate, and just be able to mentally start preparing for whatever the dispatcher was going to tell me the next hour of my life was going to be like, right?
Yeah.
It's just that the half life of any given emotion, the
Mm-hmm.
half life of any given thought that's trying to distract you really is impressively slow the better you can train your attention to notice that you're being governed by something that isn't worth your attention. Does this
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Very
And
much
this is
so.
all mindfulness practice really is trying to do. Now, there's a whole spiritual component to
Mm.
mindfulness practice and to the benefits of concentration that is very worthwhile as a human being to want to experience.
Yeah.
Um, there's nothing about deep prayer as an individual. Clearly people are having an experience when they're deeply involved with prayer to whatever deity that they worship, or,
Mm-hmm.
or, or deeply involved with contemplation, or just coming upon a waterfall that just doesn't seem to be following the rules of gravity the same way, right? All of these can be experiences of awe. The
Mm-hmm.
difference is just how you, the experiencing person, is approaching it and open to whatever experience is coming online for you in the moment.
Yeah.
I hope I'm kind of touching.
Yeah. No, no, no. I think it's just so is like, can you sort of explain sort of, is it like, whereas like the difference is, or is it like the crossover between say mindfulness and meditation? Are they like one and the same, or is like meditation kind of like a tool that kind of leads you into that kind of mindfulness practice?
I'll try to cover the meditation can almost be seen as just the experience of what you're doing in the moment, right? We got to give it a term.
Yeah.
You're meditating, right?
Okay.
Whatever you're doing with your eyes closed is what you're doing with your eyes closed. Right now, we're having a conversation, but
Mm-hmm.
I can close my eyes right now, and I'll be fully invested in a conversation by myself in the privacy of my own head, right?
Okay.
Uh, your mind is going to be doing something no matter what you are up to.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness is the skill that allows you the ability to become angry over something, whatever it is, right? Somebody hits you, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and to notice that you're the victim of that anger. You aren't that angry experience, right? But we all, without a sufficient amount of mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
something's going to happen to you in your experience, whether you get punched in the face or whatever, that's going to make you angry. And without mindfulness, without the skill of mindfulness in your back pocket, you're going to helplessly live out the consequences of this angry state for as long as they're going to penetrate your conscious awareness
Yeah.
until the problem is resolved or something else shiny gets your distraction and now you're not angry anymore.
Yeah.
But when you're sufficiently mindful, any stimulus that causes you anger, doesn't matter the severity or the amount of it, the actual stimulus of anger can't bother you more than 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
If you can just notice, there's the anger, now it's gone, but the
Yep.
problem remains. And I can still respond to the problem. But
Mm-hmm.
now without the anger at my back, I
Yep.
can respond in the most productive way forward,
Yep.
given whatever situation I'm dealing with. Does that make
Yep.
sense?
It
And
does.
this
Yeah.
this is just anger, right? You could do this with sadness, traumatic experiences, or even just moment to moment distraction. Why have I
Mm-hmm.
been on my phone for 30 minutes? I was supposed to be
Yeah.
watching a movie with my kids, but
Yeah.
here I am scrolling over, and I've just totally lost my attention.
Yep.
And that's because I am not a diligent practitioner of my own attention. And cell
Mm-hmm.
phones just haven't helped us in this day and age with that
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. And is it kind of like it sort of sounds like it's a very like somatic practice where we're sort of listening to like the stuff that's going on in our body, and I know it can involve breath work and all that kind of thing. Is it sort of also like a tool, like you're saying, like, you experience trauma or anger or fear or like any of those like natural human experiences and responses and emotions, and kind of is it like like a way to describe it to be like a tool that kind of can help you go from like the sympathetic nervous system response into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is kind of known as that rest and digest, where like your body's like starting to come out of its response and then sort of like calm down, and it's like you're actually like affecting that
Mhm.
by having that mindfulness practice.
Absolutely. And this is like we were saying earlier, mindfulness is this skill, is this training, is this term that we're going to start hearing more of as Americans,
Yeah.
more of, regardless of whether or not you pick up Foundation Fortified or pick up any mindfulness practice at this point and
Mm-hmm.
start to dink around with it.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is coming to an industry near you, okay? And
Yeah.
it's the reason why it's becoming more popular for all people is
Mm-hmm.
because we can prove scientifically
Yeah.
that 10 minutes a day of focused attention, don't call it mindfulness, don't
Yeah.
call it meditation,
Yeah.
just focused attention,
Yeah.
okay, has outrageous improvements for our
Mm-hmm.
benefits of our attention, our productivity, our quality of life, our
Mm-hmm.
sleep. But it also reduces these effects that so many of us are dealing with: depression, post-traumatic stress. And
Mm-hmm.
that's before we get to post-traumatic stress disorder, right?
Yeah.
We all, as first responders, from the moment you've seen something, deal with post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Okay, that is just the stress that
Yeah.
we feel the next time you pass that intersection where you saw a helpless woman get hurt in some tragic
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Every time you pass that intersection, there's a
Yeah.
residue there,
Yeah.
right?
It's a normal human response, physiological
And you just
human.
aren't
Yeah.
tough enough to not have that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you just aren't tough enough,
Yeah.
okay? Our minds are going to inform us when a threat came into our lives. Okay, I ate
Mm-hmm.
chicken nuggets as a kid when I was 7, and I got sicker than a dog
Oh.
And I cannot eat chicken nuggets because my mind has told me
Yeah.
a no-go, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got to get over pretending that we're somehow more than our minds, that we're somehow more than our brain tissue is that allows us to be the thinking, feeling creatures that we are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably the only thing as an industry we're responsible for at this point. I've been asked a few times if I feel like we've been failed by our previous instructors throughout this
Mm-hmm.
industry with our mental health. And I said, no,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Um, I would hate for people to stand on my shoulders someday, look and tell me how we did it wrong, and
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, there are errors along the way, but
Mm.
the way our officers and our training instructors have taught us to, anything that makes you scared or makes you feel weak in the moment, when someone
Mm.
is under threat, when there's a fire, when there's somebody dying, you got to push that aside
Yeah.
so that this has been very effective in
Yeah.
getting many 18, 19-year-olds to drop their fear and drop their cowardice or drop whatever it is that's holding them back in the moment when there's something to act in a way that's going to
Yeah.
provide better outcomes for our neighbors.
Yeah.
However, that gets results now in the moment. The
Mm-hmm.
problem we're now facing is 10, 20 so years down the road, the residue of these
Yeah.
things is not being dealt with. And this
Yeah.
builds up and it cakes on. And it's even harder to get off the longer it sits there. And
Yeah.
mindfulness is just a way of noticing, although I just saw someone pass away today. Let's take one of the hardest cases. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You had someone pass away on you. You were doing everything you could to try to save their life, and it didn't work. Okay, so what do we deal with as responders, right? We deal with a little bit of trying to brush it off, a little bit of maybe guilt, a little bit of maybe, personal failure, or just hopeful, or just what's the point, and whatever we're going
Yeah.
through as a first responder. Okay, mindfulness will give you the moment to sit there and notice these thoughts coming up as you're trying to focus on the breath. And you
Mm-hmm.
want to be focusing on the breath. That's why you're sitting down, but you keep getting buffeted by this woman or this call. And then you notice you aren't under threat here, though, right? These are just thoughts that are, I'm the victim of these thoughts coming back, and they lose their power when you directly
Mm-hmm.
look at them. Here
Yeah.
you are captivated by this call and all the things you could have done differently. And then you look directly at these thoughts
Mm.
and they disappear as fast as they came on.
Yeah.
There's this term in mindfulness and meditation you'll hear that thoughts are like thieves in an empty house. What is there to steal, right? And
Yeah.
as fun and engaging as phrases of this kind can be for meditators, the one that I think gets at first responders is any given thought that you have is like a first responder arriving on scene
Mm-hmm.
without a unit, without a victim, and having never been dispatched at all. We're just on scene of this conversation, you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, we're going to wake up and we're going to be on scene of dinner with our family if we're lucky.
Yeah.
And then we'll be on scene at the station, being a firefighter or a Capt or a police officer or whatever. And life is just coming at us. And we're
Yeah.
just continually waking up to our experience.
Mm-hmm.
But we all tell ourselves the story of our lives. And that story is what we think we're up to at any given moment. But really there's this whole component of luck at your back. There's this whole
Yeah.
component of just life happening that you aren't controlling. And mindfulness just gives you a moment to sit down and be diligently concentrated on what you're experiencing and how
Mm-hmm.
you want to be experiencing your life as you progress through it. And the more you can take those skills off the cushion in your mindfulness practice and
Mm-hmm.
into your actual life, day to day, moment to moment, the happier you become as an individual and the more you can begin to really live your life in the world, not up here in the mind, constantly rehearsing conversations, constantly thinking about those emails you got
Yeah.
to get back to. Does this make sense?
Definitely. And it certainly sounds like it can almost be such a facilitator to take away that level of like, I think like heaviness and exhaustion that kind of comes along with, like replaying the job. Like, did I do everything right? Did I drive there fast enough? Had I, put my foot to like the floor a little bit faster? Could I save that person? You know, did I do enough compressions? Did I like all of, you know, like as a dispatcher, did I, you know, notify the correct units in the correct time and get them there? Like, I think there is a lot of that mental gymnastics that goes along with, like you're saying, like our cognition, and we think and we think and we think. And then in just being able to kind of like take that moment and just kind of be like, okay, like that happened, but I'm just like, this is where I am right now. And just give yourself like that space to process it. I think it sounds like it would definitely just alleviate, like some of the kind of heaviness that I think a lot of us carry.
It takes practice, though. You know, it
Oh
is
yeah,
called
of course.
mindfulness practice for a reason. You know, there's nobody meditating right now in the world as we speak that is doing anything but practicing
Yeah.
how to deal with the constant intrusion of the mental phenomena that is trying to color our lives, right?
Yeah.
That's all you're doing. You're trying to let go of that with softer and softer feeling, because it's going to go anyway,
Yeah.
right? Like, no matter how much I hug my boys, I'm going to stop hugging them one day, and they're going to be 25, and they're not going to want me to be hugging them quite as hard, right? It doesn't matter how long I hold on to any moment, it's going to slip away.
Yeah.
And that's the way, whether or not you're truly achieving the moment in life that you want. You've captured everything that you could possibly want in this moment, and here it is. You're on top of the world. Well, what are you going to do after that? You know, you're in the place of the world that you want. You're with the person, the people that you want to be. You have the sufficient amount of coin in your pocket, and you are just absolutely on top of your game. Is the rest of your life just going to be depression because one of these isn't going to be there? Or worse, what if you never achieve that moment? There has to be something. And mindfulness practice will show you that there is an indelible contentment, fulfillment with just this next breath. Okay. In a way that really does feel like what you need in the moment. Like when you're mindfully meditating for a couple months, right? And you've been practicing, and you have this first moment where you feel like I just meditated, as if you haven't been this whole time, right? But you have this moment, and you feel it all slow down, and you feel your experience like just a collection of awarenesses, right?
Yeah.
And you're still somehow there, but it's all just happening to you. It really does feel like waking up for the first time out of the distracted simulation of thirst and hunger and hot and cold and these ethical judgments that we put on every moment of our experience, right?
Yeah.
Are you enjoying this podcast conversation, or can you not wait for it to be over? Is this a good or bad experience for you as a person?
Yeah.
That can disappear, and
Yeah.
it can just be whatever it is, and it's going to last as long as it will. In that process, can find real fulfillment in just being here and being around, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I think we might have sort of been talking about it like a little more offline, but how, and like you were talking about it a little bit earlier too, and it talks about it on your website about like there is like, you know, the scientific research and, you know, evidence to kind of back up the positive benefits of mindfulness, and it, you know, obviously like I'm studying psychology at the moment, and so you sort of like learning a lot about it, because, you know, you learn the history of like the practice of psychology, and then, you know, you've kind of got the humanistic approach, and then it became like the positive psychology, and they call it like a new wave, or like the third wave, which is kind of like the positive psychology, where mindfulness kind of got brought into like our Western practices, like you were saying. And then there's, you know, like DBT, there's mindfulness based stress relief. It kind of also sounds like it would be a little bit a part of like the acceptance and commitment therapy, all of that, you know, kind of thing. And I think I think like I, you know, mentioned to you that like my sister's a psychiatrist, and, you know, works with some sort of first responders and veterans, and her and I were discussing, you know, all of the things like trauma-based and coping mechanisms and everything when I spoke to her the other day. And like you were saying, like, there's a part of us that we shouldn't sort of like look on at our forefathers in terms of, you know, who brought us through the academy and all that kind of thing. And I look at it like, I think two things can be true at the same time. I think that they didn't know any better. Like, they taught us what they were taught, and then we've taken it on board, and we can look back and go, okay, like, they did the best that they could with the information that they had and how they learned to cope. And yeah, like all of those sort of maladaptive coping mechanisms of like, shove it down, fucking go to the pub, tell a couple of like horrendously dark humored jokes and you'll be right. Fucking soldier on, mate. And now we know so much more. So it's like, I think we can kind of go, man, you know, you guys didn't know any better, but like now we do. And the only thing that bothers me is that when they're stuck and they kind of still want to bring on that cultural stigma about people wanting to deal with like their mental health and cope in a better way. And I think that's where I think it goes like against migraine, where I'm like, okay, you didn't know any better. No one's like criticizing you in that respect, but like now we fucking do. And this actually also applies to you because you're creeping up to retirement. Do you think you're going to be okay on like that first day of retirement when like all of the shit of your last like 30 years is going to come like storming back and you're not going to have the job to keep you busy? You know,
Yeah,
so
I don't know. I, I've been. I'm old enough to not make too many predictions about who I'm going to be, what I'm going to be up to, or what
yeah,
I'm going to value in any
yeah,
given amount of time. Right? I have deep hopes that I will still have my wife and my children, and that I will still be valued enough to be a mindfulness instructor to many people out there who have value in what I have to say and offer. But like you were saying, there at some point mindfulness has to work for you.
yeah,
It's either you're either going into your Duolingo app every day and actually picking up the language you're trying to, or you're
yeah,
just trying to keep streak freeze alive, right?
yeah,
You got to do it to get any benefit out of it,
yeah,
and I'll tell you where mindfulness has come into my life and been the thing that really has turned the tide for me. Okay, and it's very recent. I snapped my knee on shift, and I did, even as a meditation practitioner for to that point about 8 years. Wallowed in self judgment, wallowed in. Prior to this injury, I was squatting 500 pounds and I was playing basketball and I was going on shift and I was doing all this and I was just this physical creature and I was just unbelievably unstoppable and then I was just pissed off because I couldn't be any of that and I might not be able to be any of that ever again. And then I had a sufficient amount of mindfulness at my back to realize that the story of this knee injury isn't going to be mine to tell. No matter how much I try to be the one that tells everyone in my life who I am and what I am through this knee injury. The story of who I'm going to be after this knee injury is going to be told to me through my boys in about 5 years. They're going to look at me someday, not as they are now, but as the young men that they're trying to become. And they're going to say, you were this guy before the knee injury, and then you were this guy after this knee injury. And the guy after is the guy that I can, at this moment, try to influence. Because the guy I was before, that's just going to be whatever it was,
yeah,
And I think I was a great father, a very involved husband, and a very great fire captain. I think I was all these things. But I'm either going to turn the tide in the direction of my fatherhood to my boys in the right direction or the wrong one in response to this. And mindfulness is really the only thing that's allowed me the opportunity to give my boys the keys to that story and be okay with them telling me someday who they think of their old man after something significant. And
yeah,
really, mindfulness is the only way you can give that kind of control about your life up to another individual to reflect back to you the actual story of who you are. Otherwise, we're all just jettisoning for our own rival interpretation about our lives with the people that we care about. It's
Yeah.
much more satisfying as a human being to allow the people that care about you and that you care for to actually tell you in the future who you really were and what you really were to them in all those moments, you know. And
Yeah.
mindfulness is the tool that allows you to give those keys to other people.
Yeah, that's a really like interesting way to phrase it. I really, really like that. Um, and that's kind of what I guess like maybe it's a little bit different since like you've been off with your injury, but
Mhm.
obviously as a practitioner of it throughout like a significant chunk of your career, is it and like I know you said like it's something that like, you know, like your Duolingo streak, but for you personally, like is it something that it's like an everyday practice, or did you view it more as like you're saying that resource or like something, you know, on your tool belt that you could go to should you find yourself needing it, or was it kind of like a bit of both?
It, I love that question because this is an important question to anybody. Like anybody
Yeah.
that's looking to pick up a new habit or pick up a new
Mm.
thing, or you kind of want to know what kind of a project am I picking up if I decide
Yeah,
to
what are
do
you
this,
getting into?
right? Look, there's nothing I'm going to say is going to diminish any of the efforts of the people out there that are for sure meditating at the top of the Himalayas for the last 10 years and haven't seen a fire. And you know what I mean? Like there are people that are diligently interested in the project of deep, deep
Yeah.
meditation practice.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think these people have thrown away their lives for nothing. There's
Mhm.
obviously something to be achieved in whatever project they're up to, right? But there's nobody that needs to dedicate their entire life to sitting with their eyes closed. 10 minutes a day really is a great threshold for allowing yourself some time and space to reflect on who you are and how you are tending to respond in this day to these stimuli.
Mhm.
There's nothing magic about what's going on about that process. We can have
Yeah.
very deep spiritual experiences, but
Mm.
there's no magic here. Okay.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're collecting data on yourself, right?
Mhm.
Today, I basically have everything. Today is going well for me. I've got an interview about my project and I get to talk to you and it's a good afternoon.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sit at some point. I'm going to collect data on myself about how I'm responding to all that and but then I'm going to have a bad day and I'm going to have a million other days in between. And
Mhm.
all I'm doing is collecting data on how I'm responding to myself in that day, into my situation, and asking myself some basic questions. Do I really want the traffic that just, delayed me for 45 minutes to actually define the rest of my afternoon? Or can I pick up what's left to have here and try, you know what I mean? And be the self-starter that finds positivity and an enjoyable experience despite what's
Mhm.
going on, right?
Yeah.
Mindfulness meditation can do so much of all this for us, but
Mhm.
you do have to put some time and effort into anything. It is
Yeah.
much less than you would think. I mean, the firefighters and cops and dispatchers and EMS that I'm talking to, many of them will have at least a 60-minute per day, several times a week, physical routine.
Yeah.
And that's going to take you anywhere from 7 if you work out every day to 20 if you were like me, hours per week to like,
Mhm.
achieve your physical dreams.
Mm.
You need it any more than 10 minutes a day to just sit down and mindfully try to notice what your experience is like without the distractions that you tend to fill your experience with. And
Yeah.
with that data, you can begin to wield your attention and your time almost like a knife and be
Yeah.
able to cut out the parts of your life that you aren't intrinsically getting value from, like your TikTok feeds.
Yeah.
Like these hours of video scrolling that we all tend to ignore the video screen time notifications on our phones. But just be honest with yourself about that for one weekend. When you get that on Saturday or Sunday morning, you spent 3 point whatever. Just be honest with yourself about what that
Mm.
looks like as a life.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, I'm spending 15 hours a week right here, right? On these videos, and what is that doing for me?
Mm.
Mindfulness can give you that little bit of time to not only develop this practice that's going to add you value to your life and help you process trauma and judgment, but it'll give you the skill to really see what's adding value and not to your life.
Yeah.
I don't really have much time for social media. There's nothing. Don't get me wrong. My business is firmly on Facebook, and try to get awareness out there.
Yeah.
But I fully want people to drop my situation as quickly as they picked it up if they can. Mindfulness is just a skill, and I'm simply here to teach you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment you don't need me, you don't need a physical trainer any longer than you need one. Unless you enjoy being trained by a physical trainer. I still use guided meditation sessions in my own practice because
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy having a guided individual that, but I sit plenty by myself.
Yeah.
And if something happens in my afternoon here that upsets me or depresses me, I'm hoping I can use my meditation skill to pick up whatever that situation has left me with and respond in the way that's going to be the most useful for my life and my situation. And
Yeah.
that's the skill that mindfulness really is. And meditation is kind of the gym that allows us to get that skill.
Yeah. And so at what point, like, because I mean, I think anyone listening can hear how, passionately you feel about it, and it's come, genuinely from like your own practice and the amazing benefits that you feel you get out of it. Like, at what point were you drawn to like become an instructor and get that certification?
I appreciate that. Yeah. I meditation is just not something you can declare yourself ready to teach in any way. I don't want to upset the yoga teachers of the world, you know what I mean? But the mindfulness that we're trying to achieve through a yoga instructor has just not been the right pathway for us to bring what really is a mindful instruction to the West and to people who need it, like first responders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is a project to being able to teach and train mindfulness to an individual to where they don't get bogged down by their own confusion, they don't get bored by the project,
Mm-hmm.
or they just don't waste countless hours of their lives trying to achieve these fine-grained benefits, right? There is a modality to the instructor that you choose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether or not I'm a qualified, good instructor is really going to be up to our industry to tell me, right? Like I'm either going to produce and teach and bring forward an ancient skill and blend it for first responders in a way that they can relate to their life,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm not. But either way, somebody else will be in my seat someday and they will be teaching, advocating mindfulness for first responders, and they will hold the keys to changing. I do not see the next 20 years first responders ignoring teaching young recruits. All right, we're going to go sit for 10 minutes after we work out today, and we're
Yeah.
going to write about how that experience is for you a little bit. And then over the first couple months we're going to keep training you on this mindfulness thing. Now, beyond that, it'll be up to you, just like it is after every recruit. Your physical capabilities are on you as an individual, but
Mm-hmm.
we're going to at least teach you, and we're going to at least
Yeah.
train you, and we're
Yeah.
going to give you the
To give you
tools
the
that you
tools.
need.
Yeah.
I don't know if in Virginia or in Australia if you've heard of this term, but have you heard of the term spinning on scene?
Spinning on scene. No, that's
Okay,
not something I've
I,
heard
I've got
about.
to get the lingo. Back here in Arizona, there's a very common term, spinning. Okay,
Okay.
and what that term typically means is this person, he spins on scene, right? He can't focus. He causes more problems than he solves because he's not in
Ah,
control of his, the the
okay.
the, the stress gets to him, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think in Australia we just say that he's losing his shit.
losing, right? Yeah. Where I'm from, we'll name call this individual behind their back and to their face, and we'll
Yeah.
call you a spinner.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
And what we're admitting to ourselves as an industry is that we lack the tools to train this otherwise healthy and young, courageous
Mm,
civilian to help his neighbors when they're hurt or scared.
yeah.
Because we don't have the resources to train through anxiety, to train through
Yeah.
depression, to train through post traumatic stress. We sign you over to a psychologist, we give you whatever amount of time off work you need, and we give you
Mm,
whatever medication you need to be able to calm those and be able to get the sleep. But we aren't training you
yeah.
to first be able to manage in the privacy of your own minds,
Yeah.
just like you do in the privacy of your own muscle tissue, to
Yeah.
train your body through that stress.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is the gym in which we're going to get that done
Yeah.
because it's the best system humans have discovered yet, right? I
Yeah.
mean, maybe someday we'll have a machine that we can slide somebody in and they can diligently go in there and correct all the neurons that are misconnected so that you don't have these experiences that maybe.
Yeah.
But for the time being, sitting down and noticing that process and
Mm,
noticing how safe you are through it, noticing that it is just stimulus and
yeah.
you can either react to it or let it pass. This is the
Yeah.
best system we've come up with for
Yeah.
being able to manage our minds through. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, and I think you're right. Like, and there's something to be said about, like as a cop, you get taught all of like the defensive tactics and all of the physicality that goes along with, becoming a firefighter and all of the things that you have to know. Um, and then on top of that, like, like being a paramedic. But I kind of go like you're saying, like someone who you guys would classify as like a spinner, like they're becoming a liability
Mhm.
to their colleagues, members of the public, all that kind of thing. And then it's like, if as part of their training to join the ranks of whatever first responder profession they're choosing, if you're also, as long as teaching them law, teaching them the combustion fire laws, whatever the shit that you guys get taught, it's like, if you're also giving them these tools, like, because it's like, if I don't know the law as a cop, I'm a liability. If I don't know how to handle myself, I'm a liability. If you're a paramedic and don't know how to like treat someone appropriately, or you don't know how to put a fire out or extract someone from like a vehicle when they're trapped, like
Mhm.
you become that liability. So it's like you're saying, it's like basically just kind of lowering the chances of someone being a liability by teaching them this, basically, like, I don't know whether it's like a somatic or a psychological tool that is going to enable them, like you're saying, in the moment,
Mhm.
and also like off shift, to kind of have that decompression that I think a lot of us need. And like I was saying earlier, like, we're taught all of these things, and it was like my sister was, saying to me, it's like we're taught, bury it down, drink it away, tell bad, dark humor jokes, all that kind of thing. And it's like, the we're never taught like the release valve. We're never
Mhm.
taught how to appropriately like decompress and just process everything. And we weren't taught because they didn't fucking know back then. But now we
Agreed.
know.
And like I said, when it comes to processing grief or it comes to processing a negative emotion or a negative traumatic experience,
Mm,
okay, the next time any of your listeners are experiencing some form of pain or discomfort, okay,
mhm.
I just encourage you, just for a moment, bore into that pain,
Yeah.
whatever it is, okay? I snapped my knee, bent three directions different, right? And
Oof.
I had the most painful experience I've ever had in my life. Now,
Mhm.
my crew would not say I was the most, I mean, I was far from a meditator in that moment when I was experiencing that much pain, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it really is in the resistance
Yeah.
to the stimulus
Yeah.
where our suffering is.
Yeah.
And that is what meditation will teach you. It's
Yeah.
the human need to try to control your experience as it's filtering through awareness.
Mhm.
That is where so much of our psychological suffering
Yeah.
is contained.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you are experiencing just a moment of pain, a headache, paper cut, whatever, just just run an experiment and just sit down and just close your eyes and just allow yourself to allow the body to absorb that stimulus, shoot it up your arm, attach it to your awareness, and just notice what that process is like.
Mhm.
And then in that next moment, ask yourself the question, what hurt more? Avoiding this or just being with it for as long as it'll be? And
Yeah.
not only will the pain go away, but you almost find an odd enjoyment in that stimulus. There's
Mm.
almost something quasi enjoyable about
Yeah.
just experiencing any stimulus. We're all destined toward a future where our awareness is dimmed by morphine because we're old, gray, it's coming to an end, right?
Yeah.
In the meantime, everything's bright and everything's enjoyable, and there's colors and there's smells and there's conversations and there's podcasts and there's kisses to be had. And we miss all of this in an effort to achieve some state, some moment in our lives where we can say, I got it all. But we have it all this
Already.
time around us, and we miss it because we want something different.
Yeah.
And
Or
that's where mindfulness can
we're
really,
like that.
yeah, exactly. Before cell phones, it was something else.
Yeah.
We're just getting better and better at distracting ourselves is what's happening.
I think that, maybe I've been like practicing certain, parts of mindfulness without like realizing it. Like I am a big fan and proponent of, like you were saying, like actually leaning into your feelings. And it's like something that I've experienced like myself over, many, many years. And I'll take sort of, say like me when I first moved to the States and like experiencing, like feeling homesick, because that pull to your homeland when you're so far away, it's incredibly strong. And I would fight it. I would fight it because I was like, no, like I've made this choice. I met this wonderful man. Like this is of my choosing. I'm here because I want this. And almost like judging myself for feeling sad about being so far away from everyone I knew, everyone I loved, and all that kind of thing. And it took me years to actually kind of, instead of pushing away from it, which would make it so much worse, leaning into it and going, you know what? Yeah, I'm having a fucking bad day. I am homesick. I miss my mom. I miss my friends. I miss my job. I miss like all of the things. And you know what? That's okay. I'm allowed to be happy that I met my husband and I'm creating a new life here, but I'm also allowed to have that juxtaposing feeling of feeling homesick and missing and grieving for all of the other things.
Right.
And so, yeah, like allowing that, just, it's like it takes it away.
The oddest thing, what you're touching on is what it is to notice thoughts as just stimuli. Okay, so take dreams for, and I'm not a big practitioner about dreaming. Okay, but I've heard one of the most interesting things about our dreams isn't the fact that you are now fighting for the bunnies of Planet Doom, in an effort to save the Carrot Nation, right? And you're just invested in this war. It's that you don't notice that a second ago you were getting into the safety of your bed. Now, you don't notice that there's something weird about just arriving on that scene and everything's normal. These bunnies are talking to me, right? There's this Carrot Nation that I gotta save, right?
I'm flying like
and you're
it's,
flying, and there's a carrot in here, and this is all normal, right? But this is what it's like to have the mind actually detached from its storytelling to your litmus testing of the physics of things, of the reality. And this is what it's like to have a mind locked in a black box, trying to interpret God knows what environment and data and language it has to learn from the moment it's born, and just try to give you a trespassable experience that keeps you safe and mildly dissatisfied. So you keep getting up to keep reproducing and finding food and finding drink and doing this whole thing that we're up to with our lives, right? But that whole project of evolution and reproduction and that whole project is blind to so much of what we value as humans, right? But we're operating on a system that is designed to have us do just those things. Be dissatisfied, so you keep trying to achieve things, and just try to be safe as you do it. Those two things govern almost every decision that you and I make. But we have these things in our lives now that we value more than those projects. And that's what we want to try to enjoy while avoiding some of the baggage that comes with having this ancient adaptive tissue that keeps us just constantly searching for more and constantly worried about whether or not we're going to be something's next lunch. We really are scared naked apes trying to go on about our lives and feel satisfied with what we're up to and why we're here. Mindfulness is just a space to kind of experiment with that whole project and to notice that really what you are is a collection of narratives. You're a collection of stories. You're a collection of experiences. and how you're going to respond next. How am I going to get to the end of this sentence? Ask yourself, your listeners, the next time your listeners are talking to someone they care about.
Mhm.
And like, I'm trying to make this point to you, right, Erin? Like, here I am on this side of the conversation, and I'm talking to you through a speaker, and I have a point I'm trying to make. But I can't tell you the words that are going to come out of my mouth next to finish this sentence, right? Like,
Mhm.
somebody might as well be whispering to me the words that I'm just repeating. I don't know how if I successfully finish this sentence I'm speaking to you right now, that in itself is a mystery. But if I somehow make a grammatical error along the way and I start speaking French to you, that will also be a mystery. But we only tend to notice the intrinsic oddness of one
Mhm.
over the other. But once again, this phrase, this sentence collection of words has a terminal point.
Mhm.
But as I'm speaking it, I can't even tell how that's going to end.
Yeah.
And that is a mystery about us as people, as human beings.
Yeah.
And everything fundamentally can be one if you just have sufficient attention to notice your moment to moment experience. And mindfulness
Yeah.
is what that's for. So,
Yeah. No, that aspect's like super interesting. There was sort of one thing that like I wanted to ask about, and it
mhm.
was from your experience, like, have there been any, are there any drawbacks, or is there anyone that like you think mindfulness sort of wouldn't be beneficial for? Like, obviously, and like we've sort of mentioned, like a lot of first responders, we have that continual trauma exposure and all that kind of thing. And I guess, is there like a certain level of wariness when it comes to, or like that it must be observed in case, so like we're saying, you've got your kind of like veteran firefighter or copper or whoever, and for the last 10 or 20 years they've had, leaned into that more like maladaptive coping mechanisms of the drinking and the shoving it down and the disassociation and all that kind of thing. And then, maybe a miracle happens and they go, you know what, I fucking like the sound of that Josh bloke. I want to like, lean in and find out what it's kind of all about. And then they sort of try and make a start with like their mindfulness practice. And I guess, like, is it like a risk that someone, say maybe in that situation, having shoved everything out for so long, like is there like that chance that kind of almost like too much is going to come in and it's kind of going to overwhelm them and almost cause more harm than good? And I don't know if I explained that very well, but
No. I'm exactly where you are. I think I know what
yeah.
you're trying to say. At any given moment, your mind really is only filled with one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we all feel like we're so busy is because there's 1,000 different things competing for that one spot in the mind at any given time.
Yeah.
Like, am I thirsty right now? Am I getting a little too warm in this shirt? Maybe I'm boring for her audience now. There's all these things competing for that one spot. And things come in and out of that one spot at a rate that's almost too fast for us to notice.
Yeah.
But mindfulness will allow you to notice, be with whatever's important
Mm-hmm.
as it goes away. And I say that to say, no matter who's coming at mindfulness, okay, no matter who's coming at meditation, it doesn't matter what experience or what
Mm-hmm.
experiences you have had.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Mindfulness is a very safe play pool to experiment in. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've been asked about psychedelics and my opinion on psychedelics, and this whole new wave of psychedelics are coming in, and psychedelics have a role to play. I have a close friend who's a battalion chief who's going through some ketamine therapy right now because he
Mm-hmm.
just cannot sleep.
Yeah.
The dreams, the nightmares, the inability to just sleep is just
Mm-hmm.
gotten to a point where he's now disordered in
Yeah.
his life from his post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Most of us are just living with post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is a very ankle-high play pool for you to
Okay.
go experiment with yourself in your mind, no
Mm-hmm.
matter where you are on the psychological spectrum. Now, I say that to say there are absolutely some individuals that will try mindfulness practice and not, one, it might even be bad for them. Two, they might need an actual not just somebody online with a platform, and hopefully, if I'm lucky someday, a paywall for people who want to have daily practice and daily,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm lucky enough to have that. But maybe you need an actual practitioner there with you, next to you. And then some people, the project won't be worthwhile at all.
Yeah.
But this is a rounding error in human affairs, I think. Like, this is a rounding error of people overall, that they won't be able to extract any value from mindfulness because they're either too mentally disordered, or they have, schizophrenia, or whatever it is that is keeping them from being able to. Heck, a sufficient amount of ADHD might be, inability to focus the mind long enough
Yeah.
to do it, right?
Yeah.
These are all questions for you as the experiencer to do. But the cautionary tale is that it's going to take some amount of effort in the beginning
Yeah.
to feel like you're doing it right. But more to the point, anyone that is having a sufficient amount of overstimulation feels like they're under severe threat while they're just closing their eyes trying to focus. This is probably a project you can go and safely put down and seek other alternatives, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing about mindfulness meditation is going to make you a psychologist, is going to give you any understanding about. The Buddha knew nothing about dopamine or the sympathetic nervous system or the limbic system or how any of that interact. He knew nothing of any of this. There's no meditation is going to give you a physics degree, right?
Yeah.
But it can give you an intuition about what it's like to be human and to cope with the interference of a feeling onto your experience. How can a room emulate sadness, right? Like, how it's just a room full of people, and somehow I'm the one that's placarding sadness onto this experience, and that can disappear, and then you're just left with the room again.
Yeah.
This is where mindfulness can begin to help with the whole project of what it's like to stitch the mind together and be a human. But not everybody, I would say very few people, but not everybody is going to take to the practice in a healthy, safe way. And that's where we just refer you to a psychologist or someone that you can talk to, a therapist, to point you in the direction of whatever is going to help maximize your effort.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is something anybody can pick up no matter where you are in your life and give it a try.
Yeah.
I really hope our industry as an advocate can get to the point where we do this for our recruits and young people as a way to help them. And that's my ultimate goal as an advocate for mindfulness.
Yeah.
Kind of auditioning to be a little bit of a mindfulness instructor for anybody that wants to get started, though. As a contract,
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping that I have something interesting to offer for first.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I hope, it wasn't sort of like taken in the wrong way. It was more just out of.
It's a very important question. I don't speak on it enough.
Yeah.
Anytime you're playing around with the mind and the warped minds of first responders, you might find an individual who just can't be in there by himself long enough, or just feels the whole project is just too. And these people might need more help than I can offer, right? That mindfulness as a domain can offer. I mean, it has its own threshold. And I'm sure you can go back east and find people to tell you there is no threshold. It's an all. And I'm sure maybe they know more about the path than I do.
Yeah.
But it is just a skill, just like being a physical, you can exercise your heart out, but you aren't going to be able to jump to the third story and pick up that kid that's trapped in a fire. You're going to have to get the ladder, and it's just one skill of many, but it is a powerful one, and it is one that touches every aspect of your life, not just in your career, but in your personal life, your relationships, your experiencing life. Mindfulness is a powerful tool, and it doesn't take more than 10 minutes a day. And I just hope that we can embrace it as an industry and move forward with it.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you taking the time to sort of to answer that, because I think it sort of shows that like you're saying, it's accessible for anyone and everyone who wants to engage in it, and there are different ways to navigate it depending on our wants and our needs and where we're at on like a physical level or a psychological level or that kind of thing. And like you're saying, it's like some people will be really good just with the practice on their own. Some people need a guided meditation, like you're saying, online. Some people may need like that in-person, guided meditation, or, mindfulness can be part of like a holistic approach that they're taking to their health. So no, I really appreciate you sort of like tackling that question, because it was just sort of something that I was interested in. And so, and is that sort of as well, like leaning into wanting to work with first responders? Was that sort of part of the reason why you got the trauma sensitivity part of your certification as well?
100%. And so, like I said, when I began meditating, I started entering any meditation meeting that was available in my area,
Yeah.
and I'd walk into one that was, a couple business guys after selling some cars in the afternoon, and they were coming in to do this thing. And, that was great. And then I'd enter another session where I'd be asked to sit on my knees and talk about these, forever lights that we're all part of and our chakras are aligned. And, it can be a very difficult space to navigate if you don't know where to go looking, because it, again, is just a space bogged down by. Imagine if physical fitness, okay, was happened upon 2,000 years ago, and the strength and power that it gave these young men made them think that, and they started writing down, the holistic. It could get bogged down with religion as well, right? Imagine a religion made of physical fitness guys. We might not have taken to it in the Western
I
world.
think that's called CrossFit. Just saying. I'm just taking the piss, I promise.
No, I get it. I'm look, not to upset any, but I'm not a big CrossFit fan too. I think it does more damage to your joints than it does benefit. But who am I to speak? I got a bad knee, so
I couldn't resist. Sorry.
What was that?
I said I couldn't resist. Sorry.
No, that's fine. But mindfulness is just a space where you can, if physical fitness was bogged down with the same kind of religious dogmatism that mindfulness training, mental training, discovered in the East was 2,000 years ago, it might have been hard for us to embrace as a culture, right?
Yeah.
If every gym you walked into, you first had to burn some incense, and then you first had to do a couple prayers before lifting or running on a treadmill. That would just be like a really inefficient process of working out. And that is how meditation has been dogmatized for so long, is you have to go through very inefficient processes to get any of the spirituality or any of the benefit that you want, because the people that have held the keys to this understanding have all done so in a very gold-plated religious context, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to grow past that. We're trying to extract what's valuable and teach it to people who need some sort of stress release, who need to understand how they respond to stress. If we haven't noticed, the world's becoming a lot less attentive, and it's becoming a lot less reactionary. Or when was the last time you were, irritated by a political meme or a tweet, right? When was the last time you let something that minor interrupt your afternoon? We've all become so weak of mind with how we respond. And that is our fault on some level as a society and as people. And mindfulness is a place where we can go to train some of our attention, to notice the next political meme that's going to come across our feed really doesn't have to influence
and impact you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's insane when we aren't training those circuits, how weak we can become, how infantile our own, Kevlar system inside here can bounce projects off of us. Mindfulness hopefully can be a space where you can go to get some of that back.
Yeah. And so talk to me about, like you're saying, you went through the academy like 15 years ago, and then it sounds almost kind of like sort of almost like halfway through, your journey that you discovered meditation and mindfulness. What was there like education or awareness in regards to mental health when you went through the fire academy? Was anything talked about? Were you given any kind of resources or tools, or talk to me about that?
I think any first responder living today who's, I would say, anywhere in the middle of their career has just grown up in a very strange space for first responders. Okay, we're post September 11th, which changed the face of first responders forever. And that's kind of when many of us started coming out of high school, or coming, right? Like the people that predate 9/11 are kind of retiring more and more, and they don't really exist. So we're all being governed by this post 9/11 way of doing the fire service or first responder.
Yeah.
And then placarded on top of that's been COVID. But the strangest thing, and this isn't just for our industry, this is for all industries, right? Everybody's their own doctor anymore. Everybody can be their own financial advisor. Everybody can be their own insurance,
Dr. Google.
Yeah, we're losing our respect for expertise. We're losing more trust in the people who have dedicated their lives to
Yeah.
studying one certain. And we as responders are also feeling the brunt of this. If you're responsible for any of that in your own personal life, have a little bit of sympathy for the police officers that are having to deal with people that think that they can be their own
100%.
governing, they can be their own first responders. They can be
Yeah.
their own, medical people, their own firefighters, their own whatever. And we are kind of coping with some of that frustration on scene. Civilians are getting
Yeah.
in our way in a way that they didn't used to, and interrupting our work and giving their opinions about how we're doing.
Yeah.
This is all we need to soften ourselves toward the overall goal of what we're here to do in America and just in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You can either be the individual that is responsible for growing their own food, sanitizing their own water, producing their own electricity, being your own first responder, or we can trust the system that we built, and that we all just need to get better at doing what it is that we're here to do and stop spending so much of our time on our social media platforms wishing we could live a different life than the
Yeah.
blessed life we've been given. I mean, there are 8 billion people on this planet, and so many of them would consider their life's prayers answered if they could switch places with you
Yeah.
and I.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to recognize that because we just live in our little, again, your mind is just collecting data from its,
Mm-hmm.
30 square mile environment, wherever you happen to live. And your entire life is focused around that 30 square mile section. But our worlds are bigger than they've ever been. So we apply our opinions to the people over there in this country and the people over there in this part of the world. And we don't just sit back and realize that we're all just doing our best here. And on
Yeah.
some level, mindfulness meditation will allow you to give up a little bit of that control that you feel like you need to wrestle the world into your way of doing things,
Mm.
because that ain't the truth anyway. Like I said earlier in the conversation, nobody was expecting to live their lives for 2 years to COVID, and we
Yeah.
don't know what's coming next. We just don't know what's coming next. So
Yeah.
you got to find a space to just exist and be happy with the time you're born into, the life you're
Mm-hmm.
born into, the family you're born into, and pick yourself up by your bootstraps and not only make the most of your existence,
Yeah.
but God damn it, try to smile while you're doing it a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
so much of us have lost our smile over the years because we're always
Yeah.
upset about some problem that really isn't in the room with us.
Yeah.
And
There's
you can keep
something to
living
be
that
said
way.
about, yeah. I was going to say there's something to be said about like perspective,
Mm-hmm.
like perspective and humility. And like you're saying, like the people that would willingly trade, their best day for like our worst day,
Oh,
because their best day is still fucking, a million times harder than our worst day, sort of thing.
I mean, consider the fact what it's like to really have clean running water near you within 50 feet at
Mm-hmm.
any given point as a human living being.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that not only was unachievable no more than 300 years ago, right?
Mm.
But a blessing that we get mad at our kids because they're spoiled. And I do it all the time. You guys have no idea
Yeah. Yeah.
how good you have it.
Back in my day.
But my God, if I'm thirsty, I can solve that problem with the
Yeah.
touch of a button and really have one of my most fundamental needs addressed in the moment.
Mm.
And other people have achieved that for me before I've ever lived. And why am I so unhappy? Like,
Yeah.
you are responsible for your own happiness in the world.
Yeah.
It is your life. It is your situation.
Mm.
And when it's all said and done, whether or not we're all going to go somewhere else or not, you have this moment,
Yeah.
and you have this day, and you have the people around you and all the skills that you do or don't have. And this is it. This is the big show.
Yeah.
And taking a few minutes a day to sit down and appreciate these moments, the breath, the intrinsic pleasure of sound, loving kindness, what it feels like to really hope that someone in your life is doing well as you're
Mm.
sitting in this chair thinking about them. All those are experiences that not only are enjoyable in the moment once you have trained sufficiently, but can really, really exponentiate the positive distractions. There's nothing like watching my boy sync up that 3-pointer, right? And like us as fathers and us as parents, we all know what that's like to watch your kid succeed in something after he's worked hard.
Yeah.
But I can't help but feel like mindfulness gives me that little extra edge to really watch that ball fall in the net, and then
Mm,
really watch my kid lose it. And I'm less concerned by celebrating my own achievement of my son with the fathers on the sideline. I'm really watching my son enjoy his moment.
yeah.
And that to me is the key to mindfulness, is being less captivated by what you need and want,
Mm,
and really being able to see that what you need and want is others. Is
yeah.
doing, we all know that as responders, right? We find more joy in doing something for other people. But it's amazing in your own personal life when you have that extra piece of food or the extra half sandwich, and you look over at that person and you're just like, oh no man, I'm actually good with my half. You can have it. And to
Yeah.
just freely give that kind of thing away and not notice that that half a sandwich is somehow yours. It's no more mine than anything else I'm touching in the moment. It's going to
Yeah.
fade. So mindfulness has this whole. It touches almost everything of your life.
Yeah, it sounds like it has that whole like big picture reach, and it sort of, when you were talking, it sort of made me think about that quote. It's like, a comparison is the thief of joy. And it's
Absolutely.
like you're saying, like we live in that social media realm, and so everyone's showing, like, their fucking best life on there. It's not reality.
That's
Like,
not reality.
no, and like, and I'm like 100% like guilty of it. Like, I'll like take a photo and I touch it up, and or I might use a filter or do this or do that, and I'm like, happily say it, because I'm like, I'm just kind of having fun with it. Like, I just
Mhm.
turned 40. I got some lines. If I could blur them out, hey, fucking lucky me. But but I'll also be completely upfront about it, because I just think it's a bit of fun. But
Mhm.
I think it's also like, whether it's always been a part of our society or it's more like a recent thing, like the hedonic treadmill, and
Yes.
we all just get stuck on it, and
Mhm.
want, oh, I get it, I need it, I want it, yep, that's awesome, oh, and then it's fucking, what else do I want next, what else do I want next? And because we just easily adapt, and like you're saying, just I just love when, like, you sit there and you explain it, and it just seems like it allows you just to be in the moment and experience joy.
The, the 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 moment's fading as soon as it's arising.
Yeah.
Like somebody once told me in meditation, I was in a session, and they told me to sit there and think about everything you've accomplished in your life and
Mm.
everything you failed to accomplish in your life. Okay. And then there was a dramatic pause, like you get in meditation. And the next question was, where is any of that right now? And you sit there, and another interesting moment. It was attached to the same meditation, is they said,
Mm-hmm.
pick somebody you care about, and somebody that you love, right? And of course, I
Yeah.
thought about my wife, and so I'm thinking about my wife, and he said, now, what would it be like to lose this person in your life? In just a rush of whatever sadness,
Mm.
horrible imagery, that what caused me to lose her in this meditation? Like, what? How did she die? Or did we just get
Yeah.
divorced? Or what? What is this story playing on in my head? And so that comes online, and then the instructor just simply said, "Now you are as alone from this individual right now, in the privacy of your own mind, than you're ever going to be from this person, living, dead, or otherwise. You are
Mm.
as alone from them as you are right now." Now, what's that? Why don't you have the sadness at your back? Because you have this expectation that you're going to see this person someday. You're going to hug that person. So you're going to
Mm.
engage in a conversation that means something to you,
Yeah.
right? But without that recognition, I was destined to just go see my wife later that day, dink and dunk, making dinner, half paying attention to her stories, and just going kissing her at goodnight, and that's the end of it, and moving on my life, right? But just the recognition that you
Yeah.
actually do have what you want in that woman.
Yeah.
And if you don't recognize it now, then when you've lost her, like you essentially don't have her now in this moment in
Yeah.
the privacy of your mind, all the better when the sight of her reflection in your vision is around you. When
Yeah.
you can smell her, when you give her a hug, and when you can wrap your, all the better. that I recognize
Yeah.
that this won't last forever.
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that mindfulness can really help you dive into your life and not need to wait until all your bills are paid, all of your responsibilities are managed, and everything you've ever, all the problems that you have are finally taken care of to finally be happy.
Yeah.
Because there's just going to be another problem when you get there anyway. And
Yeah.
if we can't learn that at a certain point in our lives as humans, then you're just spinning the wheel in the mud. You aren't gaining any traction on what you're trying to accomplish. So
100%. And that example that you give, like, I think it especially hits home for someone who is at the spouse of a first responder,
yeah,
because I
I
think
appreciate that.
all of us, and like, and I don't know whether your wife is in that realm or not, but I know for me, like, I was a first responder, now I'm the spouse of one, and I actually don't know whether it's normal, but it is the thought, like, it's a thought that goes through your head a lot. Every time they go off to work, I say exactly the same thing to him every single time. I love you, be safe.
Yeah,
So I know
I would
that
just
the
I
worst
would just point
happens.
any
Yeah.
supporter, Foundation Fortified
Yeah. 100%.
is, look, to all my first responders, I love you guys. All right, at ease, brothers. Okay, I know what you guys go through, but
Yeah.
your supporters are the reason why you can do your job at the end of the day. And to the degree that your support network is the way you want it,
Yeah.
or you wish you could repair it to be better, your support network, to the degree that it is strong, is what's allowing you to do your job, just the quality that you are.
Yeah.
The individual that has his kids getting the grades that are good and his wife that is good or her husband that is happy and everything, this person obviously is going to produce better work and outcomes for their community than somebody whose support network is in shambles, right?
Yeah.
Foundation Fortified is fully committed to the health and wellness of our supporters as well. I have two
Mm-hmm.
meditations out there already called Loneliness for Supporters
Mm-hmm.
and Little Supporters, Good Luck and Be Safe. And this one's for kids 5 to 8 with
Yeah.
parents, first responders. Um, I fully plan on having supporter meditations and a full
Mm-hmm.
curriculum for family members and especially kids, because as a
Yeah.
mindful meditation practitioner and now instructor, the tools for teaching children mindfulness are just impoverished.
Yeah.
It's just so
Yeah.
hard. My kids don't want to count bubbles anymore. They're 11 and
Yeah.
9 and they've been doing it for 2 years. They want to,
Yeah.
they're actually more curious about the project than, imagining elephants dancing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
All that stuff is great. And even my child meditation is very, very minimal and it's very simple
Mm.
for kids to follow and have fun with.
Yep.
But even that kid, if he continues to do mindful, we eventually want something a little bit more deep that he
Yep.
can sink his teeth into. So I
Yeah.
do plan on having a whole thing for supporters and first responders as
Yeah.
well.
And I actually watched and listened to both of the ones that you're talking about currently, and I think you're right. And we spoke about it like a little offline the other day, but there is something very unique for the children of first responders that I don't necessarily know that, like, all children like go through. And I was saying it, like, my children have, a father who is a firefighter. Your children are, have exactly the same situation. And there's, and maybe your wife can speak to it better because she's the one like at home with them, but it's like emotions are different when you're gone, and they're their levels of being able to cope are very different. And I pride myself on being a good mum and trying to do everything that I can do to support them in every way possible. But I can never be dad. And sometimes that is just all wrapped up in it. And so I think giving them a practice that, if it's like, hey, like, I'm really missing mom, dad, whoever is on shift, and I know that if they're old enough to have that like level of cognition, that shit, like, they do like a scary, dangerous, important job, is there something that's going to help bring me a level of calmness that is going to lean into the fact that, yeah, like, maybe I'm a bit sad because, like, I would really like them to be home tonight and they can't be. What you have, especially in the kids one, it leans into that I love you. I want you to be safe. It's like, it's okay that I miss you, but I'm going to take that energy and send it out into the world and like the atmosphere, and maybe it's going to reach mum, or maybe it's going to reach dad, that I love you and I miss you and I care about you and I
Yeah.
can't wait to see you at home tomorrow. Like, that was all of the feelings that I got listening to it. And it really just, I think it's a great resource, and I really hope that you continue down that path, because I think it would be incredibly beneficial.
No, absolutely. That's a fundamental, that's a foundational principle of Foundation Fortified, is supporting our supporters. So, there's
Yeah.
going to be plenty there for first responders to continue to go and discover, but I'm definitely going to have curriculums for wives and children, and even husbands. I know there are plenty of dispatcher husbands. There are plenty of cops of female firefighters and sorry, female cops, and they have husbands too, who have to, at the end of the day, continue to pick up the pieces of what it's like to have a, if you want a true lesson in resiliency, you can go to Foundation Fortified, or you can just look at the nearest 5-year-old. That kid's more resilient than anything I'm ever going to be able to achieve. Okay, I might be resilient for sure. I might be proud of my resiliency, but I watch my kids constantly bouncing around with the stupid decisions his parents are making about what they're going to eat, and they don't know what's going to be in the food in the refrigerator. Dad's injured now, and now dad's making all these decisions. They're going to affect how much vacation time they get, or how much the kids are the most resilient things we got
Yeah.
going, and they're right underneath our eyes. We're constantly deciding for them. I remember watching my kids go through COVID in school, and it's like, like it was
Yeah.
miserable to watch as a parent.
Yeah.
They are the most resilient examples, and we ignore them. If you want to know resiliency, pick any child and just watch them over the course of an hour, and you'll see them adapt to this adult that just was upset and yelled at them for no reason, right? And then they'll go and they'll grab a Coke that's totally fine to have the day at 2 o'clock, but yesterday I got yelled at for having it at 2 o'clock. Kids are just constantly,
Yeah.
kids are amazingly resilient, and if it wasn't for our resiliency, it'd be very hard to forgive our parents for a lot of the mistakes they made raising us, right? But believe you me, I can't wait for the day where my son comes to me and is like, "Here are all the ways you messed me up, man, but I saw you trying. I
Yeah.
saw you trying." And that's all I want. I just want my kids to see that this is my first time being a father. It's my first time being a fire captain. My first time being a husband. It's my first time being alive. And
Yeah.
I'm learning as I go as well, just like you are. My dad used to tell me all the time, common sense is learning from your mistakes, and wisdom is just learning from someone else's mistakes.
Oh,
I
I
I'm
like
just
that.
trying to be as wise as I can,
Yeah.
and common sense is going to come to you, in whether or not you decide to pick it up. Your kids learn common sense from your stupidity, right? But you think you're this wise person telling them about all your mistakes. Really, they're watching you make your mistakes in real time, and then apologize to them for it, right? But
Yeah.
we're all just doing our best to be good responders, to be good husbands, wives, fathers, and we all want the same things in life. Whether or not you're born in this country, this time, we all tend to think we're a force for good in the world, and we really want to believe that about ourselves, and we really do have ideas and opinions that we think are valuable to share with other people, and we're all just doing our best, and
Yeah.
mindfulness will really help you connect to the fact that you are just a human, and
Yeah.
that human over there that thinks and feels this way about this situation raises his kids the same, or she raises her kids the same, and she teaches her kids how to put on their shoes, and we're all just living this life, and we all just want what's best for us, and we all just want to leave as little bad impression as we could, and to be talked
Yeah.
about well amongst our peers.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is to let other people do the talking and you do the action, and
Yeah.
just see what comes back to you.
Yeah.
But too many of us are constantly wrestling and trying to, jockey for our own story about our lives. Well,
Yeah.
give up on that project. Just live your life, and listen to other people tell you who you are, and you'll be surprised the wisdom that comes with just adapting to that narrative and not being so defensive when somebody gives you a criticism,
Yeah.
especially somebody that cares about you,
Mm.
right? That those are some of the best gifts in the world that we ignore, is when your wife comes up to you and says, "You're the biggest idiot in this problem."
Yeah.
That takes courage on her behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And damn it, if that's not some of the most clarifying moments in my life, where she's like, she's kind of right. I'm
Yeah.
the problem here.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Your
those.
wife sounds a little nicer than I am to my husband. I'm just to be like, do you realize how much of a dick you're being right now? Or
Well, my, my wife can have some choice words as well. She is a fire wife after all, and she's a school nurse, so
exactly.
you know
Oh,
she's
there
got
you
no
go.
time.
Oh, yeah, she'd have no time for your nonsense.
No, she's got no time for it, and I'm always carrying around ice pack. Always.
Oh, I
She's
love
always
it.
giving me an ice pack to put on something.
I love it. And now, one thing I'm just sort of worried that, like, we've sort of explained mindfulness, and we've sort of really tried to like break it down. But what one thing I'm worried that we sort of haven't actually broken down is like, what does like obviously, and having listened to some of like the practices that you posted on YouTube, which I will like include the links for in our show notes, like, can you actually speak to what, like you're saying, it's like 10 minutes a day, what does that
Okay.
actual practice, like the nuts and bolts of, I stand on my head and do it in the corner, I'm like, really kind of get to the nitty gritty of what it actually kind of looks like, because I think everyone's like, okay, mindfulness, and I have to like go of my thoughts and really be in the moment, but like, what is an actual practice?
Okay, that's a great question. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. So mindfulness. Okay, you're going to go to Foundation Fortified, or you're going to go to YouTube, and I hope between now and someday, any listener just gives it a shot. Even if
Mm-hmm.
they've tried it before, give it a shot. You don't have to use my platform. The only goal is to notice. You're going to give some. You're going to be given something by somebody, right? And a lot of these things don't have much matter. Focus on the breath. Focus on sounds, right? And just focus there. You're not going to be able to do it. You're just not. You're going to be focusing on the breath, and then 2 minutes later, or less than 2 seconds later, you're going to be thinking about what you need to be eating for lunch, or preparing dinner, or your kids are yelling. And it's so loud, you can't even meditate because your kids are too loud. I can't even concentrate, right? You're doing it wrong already. A good instructor isn't going to tell you how to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
A good instructor is going to be able to teach you how you're impeding your own progress. That's it. That's the entire project of a meditation instructor, right?
Okay.
You are your own instructor because your experience is your own experience. A good instructor will be able to notice, listen, and understands you as a person well enough to be able to teach you how to get out of your own way. That's the only goal for a meditation instructor, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are meditating, you are going to be given a anchor, as it's known. Focus on the breath. You're going to be distracted. And the first thing you're going to do is get annoyed at this process. You're going to want to drop that annoyance. And what I tell people to do is instead have a joke with yourself in the beginning over the fact that you can't control this damn thing. Here I am trying to control my mind. Here I am trying to listen to, and you're not going to be able to do it. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do it. I still can't do it, right? You're going to become distracted. And every time you notice that you're no longer thinking about the breath or the sounds, it's like a bicep curl in the mind to notice you've lost your attention. You've become distracted. And then just to come back to the breath and to try again and get half a breath in and notice that for the last 2 minutes you've been thinking about your dog and that cute picture you took with him yesterday, right? You've just been thinking about your dog for 2 minutes. You're thinking with your eyes closed, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. Notice you've done that. Come back to the breath. You just did a repetition. That is how mindfulness needs to be taught. You are doing exercise every time you notice you've come back from the breath, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the way to meditate. And once you've gotten a sufficient enough of this training to be able to hone your attention for longer durations, right?
Yeah.
You can now hold your attention for 3 or 4 breaths before you lose it. That is the space in just 3 or 4 breaths where you can begin to toy with what is anger in the body. Who's the one authoring this next thought? I didn't choose that. If it was up to me, I'd be looking at the breath. But I'm not. I'm thinking if it was, so who's up there controlling all of that? If I cannot just easily say, I declare I'm going to focus on the breath. If I can't do that, then what can I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you get a sufficient amount of training, that is when you can take your practice from a recruit level, which is what you'll see on Foundation Fortified YouTube page. Everything's just about introductory. You'll see like some videos I have, some training videos with like a recruit shirt on, once you get a sufficient amount of training, you can then begin to play with emotional responses, traumatic experience responses. You can begin to, not to say that any of that won't come up in the beginning stages, but as a teacher, you really can't tease apart these things without having a student that can at least hold on to their attention for a few seconds at a time to try to get through to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's really all you're trying to do, is develop the habit in the beginning, trust that something here is worth having, and then to give it a try and just try to see if, you don't just feel slightly better for a few moments after you've done meditating. And that length of time after your meditation will get longer and longer until you don't even need meditation, really, because your day-to-day life, any moment can be a sufficient moment to just drop back, realize whatever state you're in, and then be mindfully aware of the next steps you want to take in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's really the project. There's nothing scientific about it. There's nothing. We can have very deep human experiences through this process, and those are worth having, let me tell you. But, there is something we're actually trying to gain out of this, and as somebody who spent a ton of time in the gym, there's nothing like having big weights and, doing what you set out there to do in that gym.
Yeah.
But I'd like to take it into the fire that I have to go perform. I would like to take that physicality there as well. That's where the rubber meets the road for me when it comes to being physical. Putting a bunch of weight up and down feels good and is fun, but where the rubber meets the road is how I can apply it. And that is what mindfulness, you're going to sit in your meditation practice and it's going to feel like something you're up to, like Duolingo, like it's going to feel like a project. And then after a sufficient amount of time, it's going to feel like a skill. It's going to feel like something you can just deploy when you approach a horrific scene, or you approach a birthday cake that you can't wait to sink your teeth into, or you approach whatever it is you're approaching. Mindfulness becomes a skill that allows you to drop whatever you don't want to be paying attention to and pick up what you do want to be paying attention to and give it all of that attention to really enjoy your experience.
Yeah. And how you're saying it's like you can put it into practice as a first responder, is it kind of like if you're at a scene, like you're saying, and it's, or, maybe you're clearing a scene and you've been in the moment and all that kind of thing, and maybe that kind of sense of overwhelm is creeping up on you because you can sort of release the valve a little bit because you're like, all right, we're like driving away. I don't have to be large and in charge. And is it kind of saying that, like, instead of letting that overwhelm, like actually overwhelm you, you can kind of step back into that mindfulness state and actually just kind of sit with it as opposed to letting it overwhelm you. Is that kind of like a good
I like
analogy?
to describe it as an on-scene report. We all know what an on-scene report is, right? You're a cop. You show up on scene. You're the first unit. You got to tell somebody what you have, what you need, and what's going to happen next in your actions, right?
Yeah.
On-scene report. Mindfulness practice is the ability to have an on-scene report of your experience right now in a way that tells you where the threat's coming from, right? What resources you need, and what you're going to be doing in the next few moments until anything else can change, right? I need to do a triage report, medic 521 alarm, on scene, 2-vehicle collision, no, whatever, you're going to do this on scene report so everybody knows what to expect when they're coming and everybody knows what you're going to be up to. Having a good mindfulness practice really is like having an on scene report available to you in your life at any given moment. Since we've been talking, I got a drink right here, right behind you. It's a little sparkling water. I've probably felt thirst 20 times throughout this conversation. But what's really important to me, every time I get buffeted by this direction, I brought this water with intention to drink it. I made sure it was off camera to be as professional as possible. And, I've been tempted to drink that water several times. But what's actually important to me is hearing what you have to say next and making sure that you don't detect that I'm in any way uninterested in what you have to say next, so that I can actually give you the response you deserve as a podcast host and as somebody who's interested in what I have to offer. Now, this is just thirst. I'm not insulting you by any way to just reach over and grab it. But I get the choice here.
Yeah.
Do I actually want to let this woman know, who's excited to talk to me, that I'm going to maintain my eye contact with her and give her what she asked to have today? Or am I going to be buffeted with my own distractions and making sure that I look a certain way on camera, my beard's a certain way, and I'm, mindfulness just gives you a space where you can just not be distracted by the little things that
Yeah.
typically thrust the self into your situation, taking away others from
Yeah.
that situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
Something
very
to
much
be
so.
myself.
Yeah. And now I feel like an
Yeah,
asshole because I definitely drank during our conversation.
you're terrible.
I am such a bitch. Just ask my husband; he'll tell you. But it's interesting, and the way that you explained the meditation practice and the mindfulness practice in our minds, drifting off, and that's being very much part of it. That's why sort of one of the main things that I personally practice is box breathing. And part of the reason I do that is because when I'm counting, that's all I can focus on, and it doesn't let any other thoughts come into my head. And that's actually part of the reason that I guess I subconsciously know about myself, that I'm if I'm not doing that, all these other shit is going to come and try to come into it. And it's even I listen to podcasts when I go to sleep, because if I sleep in silence, the freaking laundry list of all of the shit I've got to do for the kids, and clean the house and do the washing, and remember that really shitty thing you did when you were 14 years old.
Or yeah,
Let's have a think about that till 3:00 in the morning. So it's so I very much, and maybe it is something I have to learn to practice a little bit more, but it's because I know myself and I know that that's how my mind works. It's I sort of try to buffer it out, I guess, by using other things, and maybe I actually should probably
in the same way we were talking about just diving into your pain.
Yeah.
When you feel the mind bouncing around, just become curious about that. Just
Yeah.
why is this bouncy ball in my head not
Yeah.
able to stop bouncing,
Oof.
and just become curious about that. There's nothing threatening about an overactive mind. It's not going to
Yeah.
hurt you. What's
Yeah.
going to hurt you is not noticing it, is not accepting the fact that you're anxious, is really all you're saying.
Yeah.
You need
Yeah.
shit, right? Well, just make friends with that anxiety. And tell
Yeah.
that anxiety to come sit down, hang out with you. Come sit down with me for a little bit.
Honestly,
let's just be together.
she would not shut the fuck up if I
No,
let
she
her.
wouldn't.
So
But you know what? I'll tell you what she is. She's very weak when she's directly asked to sit
yeah.
with you. She fades about as strongly as she came. It is impressive how weak any given stimulus is mentally. Why,
Yeah.
you ask? Because we're adaptive creatures. We adapt so fast, which is why we've become the species on this planet that we are. It's not because we're as smart as we are. It isn't necessarily because we can run like we can, which is what allowed us to hunt. It isn't because it's because we adapt. We
Yeah.
can adapt so fast. I, back in November, was what I was. And then within 2 days, I was now just reduced to this injured individual. And all my ways of trying to fight with that circumstance is what led to all my suffering. There was a moment of before injured Josh, and now it's after injured. And any way I try to compare
Yeah.
and try to wish away that is my suffering.
Yeah.
It's just the injury, and your abilities to walk, your abilities to run, your abilities to jump or put PPE on or do the job. All those are going to come back, whether or not they do or not.
Yeah.
And all my effort to get them back is still going to be there. I'm going to try as hard as I can to be the most physically dominant thing I can be after this injury. So why stress in the meantime
Yeah.
about what may or may not happen? You're just in your moment.
Yeah.
It's yours to enjoy to the degree that you will. And that's really all mindfulness is putting down this need to wrestle with our lives and just accepting them as they are, and being able to respond in a way that you actually want to respond to.
Yeah.
And that's what I think the entire project really is about. First responders, when it comes to the traumatic experiences we have on the job, you're going to have to wrestle with some of that during your mindfulness experience. You're not going to sit down past your third session without having some Teflon of imagery come into the head of some horrific incident that you were part of, and you're going to notice your heart rate increase a little bit, and all of a sudden you're going to want to shift in your seat for some reason, and a meditation teacher will say, why'd you shift? Why'd you shift? And you say, oh, my back. Give it a couple more mindfulness sessions. You'll see why you really sit. It's because you became uncomfortable with that imagery in your head. No matter how tough you are as a man, seeing that person in that wound and that injury and that suffering, it makes you want to shift just a little bit. Yeah. And that shift right there is your tell. And you can begin to see in your mindfulness practice how if I just allow that experience to come and go, the shift never needed to happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What is the shift in your life? Is it that beer? Is that shift that argument that you're going to have with your spouse? Right here, you're just sitting, and that imagery made you shift. But in your real life, that imagery is going to come up, and it's going to make you respond to your kid with, "Will you be quiet?" Right? And you'll react to your kid in a way. Maybe that shift never needed to happen.
Yeah.
And in your mindfulness practice, those kind of lessons will allow you to bring forward into your life the ability to control. No, I wouldn't say control, but just mindfully attend the direction you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it. And it just sort of comes across like it just gives you this ability just to kind of let go of everything and just be.
It is just a skill. A skill. And, lots of people believe that they diligently work on themselves in their lives. And you do. And we are all working on ourselves.
Yeah.
But you're either letting life work on you and you're just responding in the way that you're going to respond, or you are sitting down and noticing how you tend to respond.
Yeah.
And noticing this about, and you're actually changing the way you are going to respond in a similar situation down the road. You are actually changing your relationship to what you prioritize. There was a time in my life where I prioritized certain things. The life just taught me not to prioritize anymore, right? Yeah. And the duration that and the length of time I derange my life paying attention to these things is time I can't get back and stress I can't get back.
Yeah.
Or I can choose to not worry so much about whatever this project or threat is that somebody else is bringing into my life for me to worry about, and just pay attention to what I want to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And this whole project of our lives and mindfulness meditation really is just a simple skill. I'm not going to sell somebody the fact that being, a certain BMI is the way to be in life, right? I think it's worthwhile to be able to stand up from a couch effortlessly and be able to sit down effortlessly and live your life in a way that I think there's some level of physicality that is worth having in the world. Yeah. But whether or not you need to achieve Arnold Schwarzenegger, there might be some wasted time in there that you don't need to be working out to a certain degree, but that's up for you to decide, right?
Yeah.
Mindfulness is the same way. Okay. I might choose to meditate 2 hours a day because it does make me feel good about myself. I may or may not do that as a practitioner of the mind. But 10 minutes a day really does open your experience up, given a sufficient amount of time and effort in the project to really just be on scene of your life in this moment while you're 30-something years old or 20-something or 40-something years old, surrounded by the people that you care about, surrounded by fun projects that your kids are coming home with you from school that we might think, I got to get out the glue and the glitter. Or you could just be like, man, maybe let's do this, man. Let's make this thing the best we possibly can.
Yeah.
Because what else am I going to go do? What else am I going to go do?
Yeah.
This is,
And you're not going to sit there and think about, oh my God, it's going to cause all of the mess and there's going to be glitter everywhere for the next 3 months or whatever else. It allows you just to enjoy that moment.
Just to enjoy it, man.
I really like that.
Yeah. And I hope what I'm doing in the world can be helpful for first responders. I truly do. I know mindfulness practice is something that as human beings, we can use as a skill, not as a religious discipline, if that's not something that you're into. And that's totally fine. Okay. Somebody can be religious about physical fitness. If you mentioned CrossFitters, not me. Right. Somebody can be religious about the project. Or they could just be skillful about the project, you know what I mean? And take from it what's useful about their lives. And once you're done with your 10 minutes or 8 minutes a day, just use that as a lesson and use that as a skill that you're slowly improving your circumstance in a way that's going to lead to better life and better moment-to-moment awareness of your experience.
Yeah.
That's really the goal of mindfulness practice. And to the degree that you pick it up and you take it and you really enjoy it as a hobby, be my guest. I hope I can find some people that really love it too. But as an advocate of mindfulness practice, I really believe our industry is going to be changing soon to start teaching this at an earlier age to our recruits.
Yeah, very much so. And I think one of the things I sort of throughout like your whole explanation and things that I've sort of like learned like along the way with like my psychology studies and stuff like that is that it is kind of like one of those practices that you can kind of basically buy in as much as you want or don't want. Like you're saying, like it can be 2 hours, it could be 2 minutes a day. It is something that involves practice
Mm-hmm.
and training, but it's as much as you put in, you're going to get out, but it is that kind of dealer's choice in the sense of like that bit, I don't really like that, but this bit I love. So like
Mm-hmm.
this is what I'm going to focus on, and this is what helps me, and it increases my like my compassion and my empathy, and it's taught me to feel my breath better and all of like the different things, and I've learned not to be judgmental and have like some self-compassion and all of those things. Like I think it's just that being able to kind of pick and choose a little bit and take what it is that you actually really need out of it, which is going to differ for each person.
I agree, and if there's any promise I can make about meditation is that career wise, that is, because I've made lots of promises about what I can do about your personal life and all that. But, one of the things I will tell you about your career as a first responder that you once had, and you might still have, but let's be honest, many of us lose along the way, is a real simple joy in the experience of doing for others when they need doing for, right?
Mm.
We all intuitively, for some reason, find ourselves sacrificing, money and business and all these things to serve people who get hurt or need help. And with that comes certain stability, insurance, and, stable little career and, safe little, and that's great. And we all love that about our careers.
Yeah.
But so many of us lose the simple joy of just what it's like to be thanked for showing up,
Yeah.
right? And so many responders don't get that thank you that I have a meditation called Ticket Booth. I encourage anybody to start with that one. It's just a meditation. It's a walkthrough, so it's a very easy beginning one,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a piece of writing, a meditative experience that I hopefully will allow the first responder that's listening to it to connect with this football stadium full of thank yous that we all carry around in our pocket that we never actually get to receive from the community
Yeah.
because they're being rushed to the hospital or they're being thrown in handcuffs or because we have to go to the next response or get our equipment ready or we start our documentation or whatever it is, right? It's this impoverishment of thank yous that I think really does affect us as first responders. We can handle the trauma, but there's something about the payoff that's missing. There's something about this need to know that it mattered to somebody.
Yeah.
And if we never get the thank you, we can understand what it means to be a person in need and to have somebody help us through our mindfulness practice and know that we give that to other people. Whether or not we ever get the actual thank you, we
Yeah.
we help thousands of people throughout our careers. In all of their lives will almost by definition have been changed the day you showed up. And so many of them would love to thank you down the road. And
Yeah.
Ticket Booth is kind of my chance to help you connect with that, if not
Mm.
just for a moment. So I
Yeah.
encourage listeners to give that one a try. So.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of that. And like I said, I will pop the link for Josh's YouTube channel on or like in the show notes. And before we finish up, and we have referenced it so many times, but really nuts and bolts of Foundation Fortified. Like it sounds like this time of you being injured has really been like the impetus for you to go boom. So like tell me how it came about, exactly what it's about, and what your hope and your desire is for it, like moving forward.
So Foundation Fortified, the curriculum has existed longer than the name or the little imagery I've created in
Logo,
the
yeah.
meantime. It really is just a moment for first responders to come and practice this thing called mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
tailored to what it is to be you as a first responder, right?
Mm-hmm.
obviously I'm a firefighter, so I'm probably and a paramedic, so I'm probably going to have a couple more skills here. But the essential nature of what it's like to respond to threat, what it's like to live these dual lives. I think one of the things that most was interesting to me when I first began meditating was immediately noticing that I'm two different people. We all feel like we're one person. We all feel like we're a single individual
Mm-hmm.
riding these waves of our lives. But you as a responder can prove to yourself right now you're not the same person. I'll do it for you, okay? Write down the times you get hungry at home and at the station.
Mm.
Write down the times you get tired at home. At home, I'm gassed by 9 p.m., but I don't even start thinking about sleep till 1 in the morning at the station. And
Yeah.
I can't correct for that. I could give you some story as to why that is. Well, the guys and the movies but that's not the truth. The truth is that my hormonal states are different. My expectations for how the night's going to go are different. The whole body system,
Mm.
things that I have zero control over, operate on a completely different time scale just based on the building that I'm in that day. That is not something that you control about yourself, but it's something you can directly notice about yourself
Mm.
if you just start noticing the times you get hungry, the times you feel like you need to go to sleep, the way you respond to your wife's texts when you're off shift or on shift. They're different. You're going to have more patience one direction or another. These are all things that you actually don't control about yourself, but you can notice about yourself.
Notice. Yeah.
And in the noticing, begin to make corrections so that you could be the best possible individual you can, no matter what's occurring in the
Yeah.
day that you are tending to have.
Mm.
That's what I'm hoping to be able to teach first responders.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. So what's the website?
The website is foundationfortified.org. Okay. Right now, that's kind of a landing page. You'll go
Mm-hmm.
there. You'll kind of see a little bit about what I'm up to, what Foundation Fortified is, and our links to our social medias.
Yep.
I've had the most growth on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out to woods on how to get subscribers on YouTube. I have zero idea. But in the near future, I have something like 40 pieces of content up. I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to keep coming out with meditations here and there
Yep.
because I want responders to have access to
Yeah.
mindful insight through a domain that they can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
But I do hope in the near future for those of us that want to go deeper with our mindfulness practice, for those of us who actually want to have these indelible changes in our lives that we've been talking about for an hour and a half, rather than just a critical incident mindfulness debrief. I have a
Yeah.
meditation coming out soon that I call critical incident mindfulness debrief, right? We've all
Mm-hmm.
had critical incident stress debriefings with our peers, right?
Yeah.
But we've come to find out that's a little uncomfortable for some. And
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. So I'm coming out with a critical incident mindfulness debrief.
Yeah.
This is a meditation that any firefighter, cop, you hit
Yeah.
play the day you ran your worst call. Like, this is your
Yeah.
worst call meditation. This is your worst and you can play this one anytime you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's ever going to have to pay for that. You know what I mean? Like, have it. I want it out there.
Yeah.
But there will come a time, depending on what happens in my knee and my career,
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping to get a paywall and maybe build a little community. People
Yeah.
who want to have a daily mindfulness practice might
Mm-hmm.
find value in my teaching, might find value in what I'm doing. That would be really nice.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, mindfulness is just a human skill developed 2,000 years ago for all of us to discover.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to create a system where first responders can relate to it
Yeah.
in a better way that's going to maximize the time you're sitting there to not waste your time getting a sore back, boredom, and frustration because you're not understanding the project, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to streamline this for first responders so they really can get the benefits of mindfulness meditation without a bunch of the wasted time.
Yeah. And you
I
come
hate saying wasted time in this domain,
but as
but
well,
I have
you
to.
come at it, from a place of credibility because you are a first responder and from your own personal experience the benefits that are possible through, practicing it. So
Well, thank
I
you so
think
much for
it
the compliment. I
definitely
appreciate
makes sense. Now, I do have one question.
it.
So, and I don't know, Arizona might be very different to, like, I'm in Boston, so the, whole New England area. how do I phrase this? I feel like my husband coins it a little better. And he's like, first responders in New England are like stubborn Irish assholes.
Mm.
They are closed-minded. They're kind of on their deathbed before they'll even go see their doctor, anything like that. What has the opinion and buy-in been from like some of like your colleagues? Because obviously, like they would have probably been aware that this is like something that you've practiced, for a long time now and all that kind of thing. Like, have you found that there have been kind of converts from like, maybe the first time you mentioned it and they were like, ugh, fucking bullshit. And like, has there been that kind of transition to kind of go, oh, like, so Josh, what can you tell me a little bit more about that too? Like these full on like colleagues or people, in that first responder realm who've kind of gone, fuck me, he's onto something here.
Well, I think there's I this might be a little bit of a fun question to answer. When I first started meditating, I knew what kind of territory I was trespassing on, right?
Oh yeah.
And so I'm pretty quiet about it. I mean, some pretty close friends of mine knew that I was trying this thing and didn't have much time for it, which is fine. I don't expect them to. And then I started getting into it more. I would tend to be a little less reactionary around the station, or something would happen, and I was just a little bit less inhibited by my emotions, I think, than I tended to be in the past. And so some people started to notice some small changes. It could be because he's grown up, could be because he's a captain now, whatever it is, and all that's probably still true. But since Foundation Fortified has started to come out and I've started to produce everything, I'm still out on injury. I actually returned to work this Tuesday on 40 hour. We all know the light duty curse. I'll be light duty for a while, right? But
hey, it's something. It's something. It's good.
Yeah, it's something. There's definitely this tip of the iceberg with what I've been up to for the last 10 years that I think my peers are kind of like a little surprised by, a little surprised that, I have these lifestyle talks where I can really touch on something they've been struggling with personally for a long time. And, some might feel a little failed by me because I haven't shared, and then I'm sure I'll have some of that criticism. But, there really is this tip of the iceberg thing that I think hopefully all first responders can see here. Okay, I've heard of meditation. I've heard of mindfulness. This guy looks like me, kind of acts like me, doesn't seem to look too much different. Maybe I'll click play on a couple things and just give it a shot,
Yeah.
I do hope I can have that appeal. I do hope that there's something about me as a firefighter, as a captain, just raising my family and doing my thing. But I have this little practice 10 minutes a day that gives me some pretty serious benefits for my job, my career. I hope that I can, I'm advertising for a job in a position here in our field. And I do hope that there's something about me. And it has been kind of fun to get some of the criticism, some of the criticism from the guys. But,
I'm sure some of it is brutal.
No, it's brutal. It's brutal, but it's okay. That's all right.
Yeah,
I
it's
expect
the firehouse kitchen table level of brutalness.
I do feel like it comes with a heavy amount of respect, though. I mean, I think everybody knows what it's like to try to start something.
Yeah,
what
definitely.
It's like to put yourself out there, not only like on video, but like in deep contemplative writing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, I've always been a writer, and I've always been a writer. It helps me get my thoughts out. I think I have a mild form of adult ADHD. You know what I mean? I think I've always coped with that in my life, but I've always been a writer. I insist that I'll never use AI to help me write anything. I'm very forward with all my AI is doing all my art for me, boys. All right. I can't draw. I can't, but there's something that robs this practice of its benefit if I'm using a computer to try to describe human mind experience. Does that make sense?
100%.
And so I'm definitely letting my writers or my followers and my fans out there know nothing you ever see on my page is going to be written or deployed by AI unless it's artistic or sound. You know what I mean? Like I might use those tools, but I don't want anybody to believe that somehow this is all being governed by anything that's behind the scenes. You know what I mean? There really is a practice here that's worth having, and it's worth being taught. And there's no any meditative resources I've gotten through the first responder community, whether it's my insurance program or whether it's something my bosses are sending, it's all felt hollow compared to what I know is mindfulness practice, right? It's all felt very corporate and hollow. You know, this is not that. Foundation Fortified is a mindfulness platform for you to go to discover something about your experience, your mind, and your role within your life. It's different than what outside stimulus might tell you you need to be up to. We all have a project out there. We all have to live in human society. And so we have certain responsibilities and prioritizations that we teach people throughout school and whatever to do that. But then there's this personal life back here where you have your own wants, needs, and interpretations of what's going on. And Foundation Fortified is a place that you as a first responder with these impulses to help people confused by the situation of the world these days, try and discover all the stresses. This is a place where you can go to explore life, taught through mindfulness practice, and hopefully extract some value. That's all. That's all the project's about. So
yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And can I ask, sort of like, big picture wise, you know, like, is it sort of something that you would be like, you know what, like my ultimate goal would be to go and give this, you know, 30, 45 minute, 60-minute presentation and travel all over and be in a position to be able to share it, like, in that respect? Or, you know, you're kind of just like taking it one step at a time?
So, Foundation Fortified is hopefully a community of people that that appreciates what I have to offer, and is willing to help me be an advocate for mindfulness in a larger context for first responders. Does that make sense? I am not a shy individual. I will talk to anybody. I'm hoping to find a police department or fire department within the next year that has a sufficient size of recruits and are willing to bring me out there and tell you what, you take half your recruits for everything that you normally do. I just want your recruits for 20 minutes a day. You pick the time and I'm going to meditate with them. And then we're going to have them all fill out surveys about how they're thinking and feeling over the first year of their career. And we're just going to see who's doing better. And I could be totally wrong about what I'm up to. But something tells me when I go to take those final vitals, not because, you know, I'm doing anything specific, but because I have a massive wall of research that shows that it doesn't matter if you're a firefighter cop or you're selling, you know, computers at Best Buy or you're whatever you're doing. You are a human with a mind that responds to stimulus in a very predictable way. And if you do this level of exercise for that, your mind, you will have these results. But first responders have to have everything placarded with our stamp of approval, right? So somebody's got to go out there and do this research for first responders. So I am hoping to find a department that's willing to bring me out, train some of their recruits early in their careers, and then hopefully see them through their first year with some questionnaires and some vitals checking or whatever, and just get some pen on paper and see if we should be doing this. So, you know, Foundation Fortified will hopefully be a platform for first responders, a community of people. I would like to eventually someday have an app even that you can have, and you can have a full-on experience with your own tailored piece, you know, your own progress right there for you. I would like to have that someday, but first I need to get the word out, see if the community at large is even ready for this kind of practice. And then hopefully find some departments that are willing to help me teach it, train it, get some research on the ground, and move forward. Because what I'd really like to be is an advocate for mindfulness in our industry. Whether or not I can make a little bit of a career at it would be great. But Foundation Fortified, one more quick thing. There's an organization that I'm so thankful to be part of. It's called Giving What We Can. And it's a organization that vets all the charities in the world, and they only promote the charities that give the most amount of the money that you are giving to actual causes that are doing the most good in the world. So one of the charities that they promote is called Against Malaria Foundation. What does this foundation do? It buys bed nets for children in Africa. That's it. That's its entire project. It just buys bed nets and gives bed nets to kids. So Foundation Fortified is the 49th company in the world to commit to 10% of our profits being given to charities of that kind.
That's amazing.
I've yet to make $1 on anything I've done. But when we do start bringing in money, if we do start bringing in funds of some kind, I want my meditators to know 10% of your is going to help individuals through actually vetted, organized charities. Your practice is doing some good in the world.
Yep.
10% of my profits are going to go directly to charity. And if I'm real lucky, more of them. Because the Giving What We Can Foundation is just such a beautiful organization that really vets charities, not for how much money they make, not for how much money, but for every dollar that's being given, what are you doing with it?
Yeah.
Right. And I've already made that pledge as a company. So
yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And I think that is the perfect place to leave it at, because I don't think we can get much better than that. So no, thank you for your time and coming on and really
thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit of a talker.
No, don't be silly.
I can go on and on.
No, we're Josh and I spoke yesterday, and I think it was, probably just meant to be a quick couple of minute conversation. And I think we ended up talking for half an hour. So I had the vibe that this was going to happen today. But no, thank you for coming on and letting me sort of pick your mind and really answer all those questions about mindfulness and meditation, all that kind of thing. Because
I'd be happy to come on anytime.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. So we normally finish these conversations by asking our guests 2 questions. And it comes from the origin of the name of the podcast, I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. And it's just about the fact that a lot of darkness permeates our roles as first responders. So the first question that I normally ask is, well, and it might be a little redundant given our entire conversation, but what do you do to hold space for your darkness?
Well, look.
Let's just rewind the last 2.5 hours and
I'm not
before we get your question.
You're not going to like my answer.
Oh, shit, here we go.
I would just say don't hold on to it. Don't hold on to it, excuse me. It's not to say that it's not going to hold on to you. Right. I mean, your mind is going to be buffeted by the experiences in which it has lived. If you have a mind that has experienced massive poverty, you might be a little more responsive when you start noticing resources get dried up than somebody who's always had resources, because they just expect their needs to be taken care of. Right.
Yeah.
You are just a mind that was born into a situation, born to some parents, into a time, into a part of the world that's trying to figure it all out. Now, within that entire project, you're going to be sent any direction that the world sends you, or you can sit down and try to organize. I believe that holding on to it is the problem. You know what I mean? Things will fade. All things have faded. Where did your childhood go? When was my last recess? I mean, I'm still at some level. On some level, I'm waiting for recess to happen again. I went into a class and recess just stopped happening. I used to love recess, right?
I know.
Mindfulness practice is you don't have to hold on to anything more than you need to. It's in the holding on to something that causes so much of our suffering. Just bore into anything that you're feeling at any given moment. If it's bothering you, just bore into that sensation. See that it doesn't lose its power over you and then fades. Now it might come back 2 minutes later, but just do it again. Just look directly at it in the eye and watch it not get cowardly and run away from your awareness. That's what thoughts are. They're cowards. They run as fast as they come. They just don't like being looked at. They like being in the background while you're trying to do something else. But if you look at it, it's gone. And I would just say that's the way to hold on to darkness, is by having the courage to stand up and look at it and be willing to experience it. And most people, most of the time, mindfulness will show you can make these ghosts weaker by looking at them than avoiding them for years on end and allowing them to get bigger. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I would say as a mindfulness instructor.
Yeah. No, I love that answer. That's good. And so the additional question is, and obviously, like I preface it by like the answer that you just gave, but then, so what can someone do then in order to support you and help you by either facing up to your darkness or learning to hold space for it, or whichever way?
As far as helping the project of Foundation Fortified, look, Foundation Fortified is for you as a responder. You know what I mean? To the degree that I can write and produce mindful insights or mindfulness meditation sessions that are improving your experience as a person, as a responder, that is how you can help the project of Foundation Fortified, is through helping yourself, right?
Yeah.
Please share anything that's valuable to you, as if you come upon a mindfulness or a lifestyle session or something that draws value. Maybe it'll drive value for other people, draw some value for other people. But, I'm a happy individual. You know what I mean? I've got it. Look, I broke my knee, and my wife's a school nurse, and my two boys are 11 and 9. I'm 35 years old. I would be lying to everybody that I've ever met if for the last 2 months, June and July, I had my wife home alone, I had my two boys home with me, there wasn't a single supervisor calling my wife or me to be at work and disrupt our situation. Who wouldn't kill to be me, to have your family and everything that you've built? This might be the summer I look back to on my deathbed and say, that was living. Now, if I can't recognize this, I paid the price of a hurt knee, right? Like a severely hurt knee to get here. But I might never have my children at this age again. And I'm never going to have my wife's beauty and youth and attention in the way that I do now. And I'm not going to have the resources and the time that I do now with my family. So if I can't be happy now, then I'm just a fraud about everything that I think that's important to me in my life. So, helping Foundation Fortified, and, I'm glad to have anybody on board who loves the project and wants to see more mindfulness to our recruits, and see if this project doesn't have a way to help us in the same way that physical fitness did back in the 1950s for first responders. But in the meantime, just live well, serve your communities. I say after every single meditation, may you be well and ensure the wellness of others. Because that is what I want from anybody, is just, may you be well, and as a first responder, ensure the wellness of others. Because that's it. That's how you can help.
Yeah. No, I really like that. That's awesome. All right.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. I probably talked for a long time. You go to Foundation Fortified, they are 2 minutes long. I just quick. Okay.
That's all right. My listeners know I tend to be a little verbose on here, so they're used to it by now. It's fine. No, thank you so much for your time, for sharing everything about your practices, about Foundation Fortified, and everything that you are doing and trying to do for the first responder community in terms of their wellness and their mental health, and just like you're saying, making it so everyone's thriving and surviving and doing the best that we possibly can. So I really appreciate your time
work today. As well. I mean, this is, what you're doing is helping people like me get the word out, and I couldn't do it without the help of others. We're like we were saying earlier, we all have a role to play. And Foundation Fortified goes nowhere if somebody doesn't believe in it. And I really appreciate you allowing me to be a guest on your podcast. I just hope that it's been enjoyable.
Yeah. No, it's been an absolute pleasure and a wonderful learning experience.
Awesome.
All right, Josh, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. We'll see you.
This has been another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I've been your host, Erin Jane. And as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers.